What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 423. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how goes, sir? How are you?
Good. Unfortunately, only a week left in Cube, but I will live.
You've been maximizing?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, 13 or 14 trophies or something. So.
Whoa, that's really good. Nice work, buddy. Especially considering that I'm sure some of the Cube time was on your stream where
I haven't come close to losing.
Yeah. I mean, you were telling me the other day that like the chat was freaking out because you hadn't got a win condition and then you got a late one and you just like didn't take it just to spite them.
Okay, look, it takes a little more context than that. I was drafting Storm and the whole time the chat's freaking out because I don't have a Tendrils or Brain Freeze or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I get a Tendrils pick 8, pack 3, the last possible pick you can get it. And chat starts going off about how lucky I am and how I got there. And I'm like, look, to prove a point, I'm not going to play the Tendrils. You can just cobble together all sorts of horrible win conditions in Storm. And I didn't need it. You know, the deck was fine without Tendrils.
Unreal. Yeah. Only you can do this, by the way. This is a don't try this at home moment if I've ever seen.
I don't recommend it. I've written a lot of articles about Cube because I really do love it that much. And I mentioned that Storm is fun but not good.
No, it's not good, and it's also quite difficult, though. It does push the boundaries. All right, so this show, big one. We've got the Rivals of Ixalan Set review. This is for the commons and uncommons. We're going to be going through every single one. That's, of course, to help get you prepared for your pre-release and any events that you decide to play after that. Before we get into that, I got to mention our sponsor. That's channelfireball.com. That's right, the place to go on the internet for everything Magic related. You can pre-order Rivals of Ixalan right now. And what that does, it makes it super easy. You get your pre-order in now. You can get singles. You can get sealed product. And boom, the day that they can ship it to you, it's in the mail. You're going to get it as soon as possible. And of course, quick shipping is just one of the great benefits of shopping on channelfireball.com. So please do check them out. You're going to find awesome free content. You're going to find supplies of all sorts, videos, articles. And like I said, if you want to get Rivals of Ixalan, you can do it right now. Pre-order on channelfireball.com to get ahead of the game there. The show is also brought to you by you. That's right, the dear listeners via the Patreon, patreon.com/limited resources. All the information's on there. This is just a great way to support the content that helps enrich your life on some level. Maybe it just makes you happy. Maybe you find it very useful. Maybe you make some money from it. Whatever kind of stuff you get, that you consume, this is a way that gives a model for the people that make it to make it their career, or at least to put the amount of time necessary needed to make great content into it. And we have a Patreon we have for a while, and patreon.com/limited resources. We thank each and every one of you who help make the show possible. All right. So what's going to happen now is we're going to go through the grading scale overview. That's just going to run down why and how we use our grades. And then boom, we're going to jump right into Rivals of Ixalan. We're going to start off with the gold uncommons and then move to the white cards, and off we go. So Luis, why don't we break down the grading scale overview right now?
So we use an A through F scale with 2 grades after that, which we'll get to. The A's are bombs, game winners, good in many situations, especially when behind, and the best cards in the set. You'd expect A's to be the best cards. These are cards like Hostage Taker, Vraska, Relic Seeker, Regisaur Alpha. You see a lot of rares and mythics at A. B is cards that actively pull you towards your colors. These are the headliners for the set, go-to cards, and reasons to be in a particular color, clan, guild, or tribe in this case. So these are cards like Walk the Plank, Vineshaper Mystic, Imperial Aerosaur, the cards that you're not unhappy to first pick. The C's are playable, the pawns of limited, they're interchangeable, and every deck you draft is going to have a decent amount of them. So these are cards like Frenzied Raptors, Skyknight of the Legion, Brazen Buccaneers, cards that are, removal or mediocre removal combat tricks. The D's are sometimes playable, but cards you're pretty unhappy if you run them. These are mediocre and junky cards like Wily Goblin, Verdant Rebirth, and Gilded Sentinel. F is cards that are virtually unplayable in all scenarios, so cards like Primal Amulet, Sentinel Totem, Sanguine Sacrament, just cards that you, throughout the course of an entire set, you will not put in your deck. We have two subgrades. One is sideboard. So these are cards that rarely make the main deck, but can be powerful out of the sideboard. We have a separate grade for them because they're A's or B's when you bring them out of the sideboard, but they're F in the main deck, so it's not exactly linear in that sense. Cards like Crushing Canopy and Demystify. And then lastly, we have Build Around. These are cards that can be excellent when they have the right support. So on their own, they're nothing special. In fact, they're quite bad, but with the right deck, they're quite good. So these are cards like Favorable Winds or Makeshift Munitions.
Right. So we also like to remind you before we start grading the cards and stuff that these grades are an initial starting point. Usually without that much context, but now we actually do have a decent amount of context because we know one of the 3 packs for booster draft or 2 of the packs for sealed. So we will be putting them in that context, but these are a starting point and they do change. We change them in the coming weeks. We will be reevaluating the cards as we go through, but this is going to get you a good solid starting point to jump off from so that when you walk into your pre-release, you're not walking in going, I don't know any of these cards. I'm completely lost. So why don't we get in? We're going to start again with the gold uncommons. The reason that we do this is pretty simple. A lot of times they act as kind of a signpost for the color pair that they represent, and it can give you a good feel for what kind of things you should be doing in that color pair. So we're going to start off. Our first card is called Ixalan Seer, and it is 1 green white for a 2/3 human druid. By the way, these are all uncommon, all these gold cards, so I'm just going to assume that you know that for this first section. It's a 2/3 for 3 that taps to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and you can sacrifice it to return target dinosaur card from your graveyard to your hand.
This card is quite good.
That's good. That's got a lot going on.
I would be happy with a 3 mana 2/3 that tap for 1 mana of any color, just because that already is a ramp card that has, a relevant body. 2/3 can brawl. When you play this, sometimes your opponent won't be able to attack into it. But adding the ability to swap this for a dinosaur makes this great, because in the late game, this can just become your, 6/6 for 6 that died to an earlier removal spell or got discarded or countered. When you don't need the mana, it turns into a dino. When you do, it just sits in play ready to get value. Plus, if your opponent tries to kill this, you can just sack it at any time. So if you imagine you traded off like a Raptor Companion on turn 2 and then turn 3 you played this, if your opponent has a removal spell, they can't even cast it on your Seer because you just get your dinosaur back.
That's right. And sometimes they're really going to want to, because the fact that it adds any color of mana to your mana pool can open up a third color. And in a tribe like dinosaurs, we know that, there's a lot of dinosaurs with red in their mana cost too. So a lot going on there for the Seer. I'm pretty high on it. I like it. I would give it a B-.
I think it's just a solid B. I think it's going to be one of the, uncommons you're very happy to have when you're in this color pair.
All right, let's move on to Deadeye Brawler. That's our next card. It's a 2 blue-black for this one's pretty cool, 2/4 Death Touch Human Pirate, but it's got Ascend. I'm going to read this once. We talked about it on the show last week more in depth, but Ascend says if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. So the Ascend bonus on Deadeye Brawler is whenever it deals combat damage to a player, if you have the City's Blessing, draw a card. I like that. 2/4 Death Touch is a real pain to tangle with on the ground.
Yeah, 2/4 Death Touch for 4 is already good because they're going to have to trade multiple cards for it in a lot of the cases. And then the fact that later, super late in the game, it starts becoming a relevant attacker, that's a nice little bonus. I think this card is just very solid. So to give like an overview of Ascend in general, and this is going to apply to most of the cards with Ascend, I don't think you're going to get the City's Blessing all that often, and you're certainly not going to do so very quickly. Like sometimes you might get there with like Prosperous Pirates and Treasure, but honestly, this is just not a mechanic I'm putting a lot of stock into in terms of how it changes my card evaluation. So when I'm looking at Ascend cards, I want to be able to cross off the Ascend text and be happy with the card. And in this case, you very much can.
Yeah, absolutely. Where would you put it?
I think Deadeye Brawler is going to end up being like a B- just because if you play this on turn 4, a lot of times your opponent just cannot attack you.
I mean, if you're looking to block, this is a fantastic way to do so. It blocks basically all the 2 and 3 drops and a lot of the 4s. And then if it needs to, it can trade off for a 6, plus drop or whatever. I just love cards like this. It's also a pirate, which might matter.
It's also just free raid. because when you attack with this, they're not going to block the vast majority of the time. And it's in the color combination that I think has a good shot of actually getting the City's Blessing compared to some of the other ones. So
Right, because of treasure.
Because of treasure mainly. So I think Deadeye Brawler is a fine card. I would give it a B-.
I like B- on Deadeye Brawler. I also just like the card a lot. Next is called Dire Fleet Neckbreaker. Great name. 2 black-red for a 3/2 Orc Pirate. And it says, attacking pirates you control get, +2/+0. That's a big bump.
Yeah,
of course, it counts herself, too.
This is an aggressive card. If you can play pirate into pirate and then play a Dire Fleet Neckbreaker on 4, your opponent's in for a bad time.
Yeah. I like that. Now, it is a 4-mana 3/2 that's gold.
It is a gold card. It does not have huge stats. Like, yes, this attacks as a 5/2, but without some kind of combat trick or ways of grand evasion, you're not really putting the Dire Fleet Neckbreaker into harm's way, because she's just going to die. On the other hand, this does make it so your really aggressive pirate deck has a substantial bonus for being all pirates. I'm not super high on this card. I don't think that I would want to open a draft with this card, which the gold cards should make you want to just jump into those color combinations. And the first 2 I saw, I think were, I'd be pretty satisfied with that. I think Dire Fleet Neckbreaker is going to be somewhere like a C+, and then we'll end up, higher or lower once you get a little later in the draft.
Safe to assume that you're on most scenarios going to get 1 attack step with the Neckbreaker. I mean, they're going to prioritize trading off with this card, and they're going to be able to do so.
You're going to either she's either going to get into combat once and then die, or it's just going to sit and play as kind of like a global aura, right?
Like don't attack me.
So,
okay. Well, I like C+ for Dire Fleet Neckbreaker. It's a little bit more narrow of a card than the first 2 that we first saw, but +2/+0 is no joke. You can set up some pretty nasty attack step with that kind of effect. Next is called Jungle Creeper. This is 1 black-green for a 3/3 elemental. So we like to talk about the vanilla test on these 3-mana 3/3. Even if it's gold, that's strong, right? If you're in these colors, you're going to be able to cast that. And I think 3-mana 3/3s are a little underrated right now. They're just so good at combat. But this one actually has a special ability, 3 black-green, and you can return it from your graveyard to your hand. You just pay that mana, and you just get it back to your hand.
This card's super annoying to deal with.
No kidding.
One of the things, the piece of text I was looking for on this, there's nothing that says it can't block.
Yeah, right? Because all they're going to do is just like block, get it back, block, get it. I mean, it's mana intensive, but effective.
Like, there's nothing that says, this enters the battlefield tapped. When they play this, you're going to look at your attackers and you're like, wow, I really do not want to attack in a Jungle Creeper. And it's big enough and cheap enough that it might just outclass the creatures anyway. This card seems good to me.
It does to me too. Now, the thing that makes me worried and also curious is that, now all of a sudden we have a black, green, gold card. We didn't have that in Ixalan. So I don't know what changed here. And I also don't know, as far as signposts go, look, the Dire Fleet Neckbreaker, the card from before, well, it's pretty obvious what that's trying to tell us. We want to be attacking in that color pair. But what about here? Is there a graveyard sub-theme we're looking for? Like,
I think this
am I just milling a Jungle Creeper? Or
I think this is just a value card. And black-green, initially, my initial take on black-green is that there's not a ton of incentives to get into it. Jungle Creeper is one of them, but I can't imagine wanting to first pick this card because of just the way the format looks, and that black-green is not as supported. So while I think this card is around a B- level card, I think I would put it at C+ in this format.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? Is we on the surface you can tell it's very powerful and quite annoying, but are we actually going to play this color pair just for Jungle Creeper? Well, we'll have to see. I'm still going to stick with B- for it. I like Jungle Creeper a lot. I love the base power and toughness and having no drawback. Next is called Legion Lieutenant. It is the vampire card. So as you might guess, it's black and white. And that's actually all it is. It's just black-white for a 2/2, vampire knight. And boy, other vampires you control get +1/+1. Yikes.
So
that's powerful. All those little tokens floating around are now 2/2s?
Yeah, Legion Lieutenant is great. This is a card I'd be very happy to open. I think this is much stronger than Dire Fleet Neckbreaker because it's less conditional. It's just always, and because vampires do make tokens and have lifelink and cool stuff like that. So I like Legion Lieutenant at just a solid B.
Yeah, I do too. This card looks awesome, and it reminds me of the next one, which is called Merfolk Mistbinder, which is very similar card. It's green-blue for a 2/2 Merfolk Shaman, and it does the same thing, except for with Merfolk, it gives other Merfolk you control +1/+1. Is it a little worse than the Legion Lieutenant because you don't have as many, tokens and extra bodies around, or is it still, just awesome?
I think it's still quite good. Merfolk wants like one unblockable Merfolk for 1, which we'll review later. I think is the kind of card that Merfolk wants, and this works very well with that card. Merfolk is just an aggressive deck, and 2-drop Merfolk are just very sweet. So I think Merfolk Mistbinder is also a B.
I do too. I think this card's scary too. I mean, that deck was already kind of scary. Merfolk Mistbinder makes it worse, or better as it were. Next one is called Raging Regisaur. So they've somehow combined.
Charging Monstrosaur and Regisaur.
No,
Alpha.
not charging. The Raging Sword Tooth. Yeah. And it's like, anyway, it ended up smaller somehow. It's a 2 green-red for a 4/4 dinosaur. And whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player.
This card
How effective is that?
awesome.
You don't see that ability very often.
Well, it's good because it can pick off like their 2/1s or make it so you can attack into a 4 or 5 or just attack, and ping your opponent for 1. You can also trigger Enrage with this. So,
oh boy,
this card just looks awesome. I think,
looks so good.
I think it's just very good. It's good without any synergies. It's good in any red-green deck, and it's great once you start adding Enrage and Dino synergies. So, Raging Regisaur actually gets a B+ from me. This card just looks incredible.
I think so too. And one of the things to keep in mind for Raging Regisaur is that you will very rarely see pingers in printed these days. And if they do, they're clunky, slow, demanding. You don't simply turn them sideways and get it. And guess what you're going to want to do with Raging Regisaur anyway? You're going to want to be attacking. So now you get a pinger attached to an already really solid 4/4 for 4. I'm a big fan. B+ for Raging Regisaur. Next one, another dinosaur. It's called Relentless Raptor. Looks like they're all about the R's here in the dinosaur camp. It's red-white for a 3/3 dinosaur with vigilance. This is great ability. Relentless Raptor attacks or blocks each combat if able. Just put me in the game, coach.
Oh yeah, this is a high variance card because
no kidding.
Sometimes you'll play this turn 2 on the play and it'll just be a beating. Like your opponent is just going to be like, "Wow, I'm just dead."
Because you were just going to attack with it anyway. Yeah.
Sometimes you'll look at this card and be like, "I can't play this card."
Literally have to keep it in my hand.
They have a 3/4 in play. If I play this, it's just going to block their 3/4.
Right.
I think that red-white is aggressive enough that this card is good. Like, you'll be happy to start this in your red-white decks, but this isn't a bomb. This isn't something on the level of a lot of these gold uncommons. So I think Relentless Raptor looks like a C+ to me, just because it has a very real drawback.
That's a super, super real drawback. And you're getting something back. It does have vigilance, but that can honestly be a drawback on a card like this sometimes as well. C+ for Relentless Raptor. Once again, I mentioned for Jungle Creeper that we didn't get a gold card in that color pair. We didn't get one for blue-white, but we have one here. So here's Resplendent Griffin. This is 1 white-blue for a 2/2 flying Griffin with Ascend. And whenever it attacks, if you have the City's Blessing, you put a +1/+1 counter on it.
So this goes back to my earlier point, which is, I'll play a 3-mana 2/2 flyer. That is a fine card. But this card is not really packing a punch until you have the City's Blessing. And I'm just not counting on my 3-drop needing to wait till 10 permanents before it becomes very good. So...
But the baseline does get there, right? Like a 2/2 flying for 3 is still a card you would play.
If I was already white-blue, which is a tenuous color combination.
I see. So you're talking about, does this drag you into white-blue? No.
Oh, definitely not. It's not like a 3-mana 2/2 flyer is like something that you sit up and you're like, wow, I did it. Right?
No, it's acceptable.
Skymarch Bloodletter is good because it has the additional ping and it's a vampire. This is not a supported creature type and doesn't have that. So I think that Resplendent Griffin is something like a C-, just because you basically have to be white and blue already before I'd even consider it. I would not consider this a reason to go into these colors.
Yeah, it's tough because I like the card a lot, but I agree with you on that. I'm going to go C- on Resplendent Griffin. That leaves us with, and also, what are we looking at? Ascend, I guess, is the blue-white. Anyway, we'll have to keep an eye as we work our way through the commons in that color pair. Stormfleet Sprinter is our last gold card. It's 1 blue-red for a 2/2 human pirate with haste, and it cannot be blocked.
This card is a beating.
That's a beating.
Yeah, Stormfleet Sprinter, I mean, it comes into play tapped, right? Like you play this, they're already taking 2.
Tapped and attacking.
They took 2 turns ago when you have this card in your hand. Like this card is very aggressive, and it is what Red Blue wants. Red Blue is aggressive and it cares about pirates, and this is an aggressive pirate. So
yeah, no downside to this. No. Only 2 power, so you'd love to augment that if you could, but it has haste. It can block. It just doesn't have to. So yeah, I think Stormfleet Sprinter is fantastic. I'd give it a B.
Yeah, I like B for Stormfleet Sprinter. It is a reason to be in these color combinations.
By the way, this makes me nervous because, we've seen some pretty aggressive stuff here. The Direfleet Neckbreaker, the Stormfleet Sprinter, the Relentless Raptor, the Raging Regisaur, and both of the Lords that we saw, the Mistbinder and the Lieutenant. They're all pretty much encouraging attacks here. And I'm really hoping we get a bit of a reprieve, from the just attack type format.
I'm a little ahead of LR just, well, in general, but in my set reviews.
You are part of LR. That is not a dig when you put yourself in that group.
You make a compelling point for once.
Oh my God.
I have been looking at a lot of the text on these cards, and blocking is not a mechanic featured in the set.
No, I of course I wrote a preview article for Wizards, and I was like, oh, it gets flying when it attacks, huh? Oh, has menace, huh? Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that as we work our way through. But I have had a similar initial impression. Although I haven't read every single card yet. Like I like to save a few of them for the set review so that I can kind of tackle them as we go. All right, so let's move on to white. This is where we're going to do, again, commons and uncommons together. First card is called Baffling End. It is 1 and a white for an enchantment at uncommon. It says when it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls with converted mana cost 3 or less. And when it leaves the battlefield, when Baffling End leaves the battlefield, target opponent gets a 3/3 green dinosaur creature token with trample. Interesting. So a lot of the time it's just going to kill something cheap.
This is
right?
essentially a Silk Wrap, if you remember that from Dragons,
yes,
right?
I do.
The difference, so it's 1 and a white, enchantment exiles a creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. The difference is if they manage to remove Baffling End, they get a 3/3, but they don't get their creature back.
That's right. And it's interesting though. I wonder how often a 3/3 trample token is better than the thing that you exile.
I
Probably
think most of the time.
Yeah.
But this card's still very good. There's not that much enchantment removal. I'm not like super worried about my opponent dealing with this. And when you're looking for early plays, this is a good one. It negates whatever they played on their first 3 turns.
Yeah, normally I give these a little bit of a downgrade as far as removal because it is so conditional. But I think that this type of card is actually better in sets like these where if it ends up being very quick, you need to have cheap answers for their early threats to try to survive to the late part of the game or enact your own game plan, and Baffling End seems like a good tool for that. Looks like a good card to me.
Yeah, it looks good to me. I think Baffling End's going to end up being like a C+.
Okay, C+ for Baffling End. Blazing Hope is next. It's white for an instant at uncommon. It says exile target creature with power greater than or equal to your life total.
This is like the White Death Shadow or something. So I think this card is quite bad.
Yeah, how do you even manage this?
So the bigger the creature is, the easier it is to target it. But imagine you're even looking at a 6/6. This is a card that you cannot play until you're at 6 or less life.
Oh yeah, no.
That's just not good.
That's not good.
And more often it's going to be a card you can't play until you're at 3 life. So I think I'm just off of Blazing Hope.
Yeah, this seems really bad to me. I'm actually going to just start off with F. It is instant speed 1 mana removal that can kill things at some point, so it's probably going to pop up here or there, but that is so utterly conditional, and I'm not a big fan. What do you give it?
Oh, I think it's just an F. Okay. I think that the only time I can imagine boarding it in is if you're in a super aggressive matchup and they have a bunch of pump spells or something, so they're like, give my creature +3/+3. It's a 9/9, or I don't know. This is just an F. I have no hope for this card.
Yeah. What does Cleansing Ray do?
This one's pretty sweet. It's very flavorful. It's 1 and a white sorcery at common. Choose 1, destroy target vampire, or destroy target enchantment. So
what's the flavor here?
It's a cleansing light of sun, and vampires don't like sun.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, why does that blow up an enchantment?
That's traditional magic lore. There's a lot of light blowing up enchantment sort of nonsense.
Okay, I see. And by the way, we can see what the artist chose. They chose to destroy target vampire.
Yes, they did.
So do we like this card? This is just a straight up sideboard
So it's a
card?
straight up sideboard card. You're not main decking a card even though it can kill two different things that, is this narrow. But as a sideboard card, I think this is like a B. When you bring it in, it's going to be good.
Very much so. Yeah, especially because there are enchantments in specifically white, but also even a few in black that you could hit that aren't vampires that you would bring it in even if you were playing against vampires. So that's a lot of good overlap for Cleansing Ray. Sideboard B for Cleansing Ray. Next is a reprint. It's called Divine Verdict. It's 3 and a white for an instant. It's common, and it says destroy target attacking or blocking creature. We used to scoff at removal like this. Is it time to embrace Divine Verdict?
Embrace is a little strong because this still doesn't remove a blocker, right? You attack them, they block, you Divine Verdict, your creature still got blocked. But this is a fine card. This is a playable card. I mean, paying 4 mana to kill a dinosaur as depicted is something that you'll not be unhappy to do. And it kills auras too. When your opponent puts Mark of the Vampire on something, as long as it's not...
certainly going to be playing it.
Yes. Yeah. As long as it's not, the Hexproof Mondo combo, Divine Verdict does a good job. So I think Divine Verdict is a C, just straight up C.
C, solid, playable removal. Would you have preferred if it was called Neck Snap or Divine Verdict? This is important.
I like Divine Verdict because, there's the Vampire's Church flavor.
Okay, cool. And that does seem to be
what's very important
here. Yeah. What about Everdawn Champion?
This is uncommon. 1 white for a 2/2 human soldier uncommon. So it's tribeless. Human soldier is essentially not a tribe for the purposes of this set. It says prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to Everdawn Champion. So this is a card that we would have seen at rare if it was printed, some number of years ago. But here we are. It's a 2/2 that can't take combat damage.
Interesting. So it can just block indefinitely.
It's better on defense
as long as it's trading or better. Interesting.
It's very good with pump spells. Like if you put a Mark of the Vampire on this, you are really doing it.
Yes, absolutely.
It's going to be really annoying. Some decks are not going to have a way to get rid of it. Like the dinosaur deck has to either kill it or trample over it. It doesn't have a very clean answer otherwise.
But it does die to all removal.
It does die to removal. It's not immune to damage-based removal, and it's not immune to just any normal removal. But again, some decks will be in a lot of trouble when they see this card. I think this card is good.
It does. Wait, hold on. Before it does die to pounce.
Yes, correct. It does die to anything that isn't literal creatures dealing damage, via attacks and blocks.
Okay.
So the fact that you can pump this, with a number of different cards is nice. The fact that it's a super good blocker is nice. I think Everdawn Champion is a B-.
Okay, I like that too. What an annoying times when you don't have removal, you're like, what am I supposed to do about this card? Like
this card is probably going to be one of the more annoying cards to play against.
Yeah, I like B- for Everdawn Champion. Exultant Sky Marcher is 1 white for a 2/3 flying vampire at common. It's also a soldier.
This card's good. It's
solid, super solid.
It's a solid vampire. Any deck that can create the mana used to play this, so any deck with 9 or more planes, I think is going to be happy playing this card.
Definitely.
And it's going to be even better in vampires. So this looks like a C+ to me.
It does to me too. This is like a classic solid playable that you're going to see all the time in the format. Famished Paladin is next. It's 1 and a white for a 3/3 Vampire Knight at uncommon. It doesn't untap during your untap step, but whenever you gain life, you untap it.
This card's interesting.
Interesting.
I think it is very good because at the very worst, it can just block. It's a 2 mana 3/3 blocker.
Yeah, just don't tap it. Yeah.
And that is just a really good card. Some decks are going to have a real hard time dealing with that. And then if you have incidental life gain, which Vampires has a lot of, there's a couple different spells that just have the gain 2 life rider. There's all the lifelink creatures. There's a bunch of other spells that randomly gain you life. Famished Paladin just becomes a 2 mana 3/3 with not much of a drawback, and that's really good. So I think Famished Paladin's going to end up being like a C+.
If you're an aggressive vampires deck, I mean, you really have to pay attention to your lifelink and stuff, though, right?
Yeah, your Skymarch Bloodletters. But turn 2 this, attack, play Skymarch Bloodletter. Like, that's just game, right?
That's really good. Yeah. And the times when you know you're not going to be able to untap it, you simply stop attacking with it and let it be a great blocker. What did you give it, a C+?
I think C+ for Famished Paladin.
Yeah,
I think it's
like
borderline B-, but I would give it a C+.
Yeah, I'm certain that there will be decks where it is higher than a C+, but on average, probably so for Famished Paladin. This was one of our preview cards from last week, Luis. This is Forerunner of the Legion. It's, what did you call it, Vampiric Tutor?
I'm never not going to call this card Vampiric Tutor. This is a 2 and a white for a 2/2 Vampire Knighted Uncommon. And when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a vampire and put it on top of your deck. And then whenever another vampire enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So basically, this is 3 mana 2/2. Search your deck for your best vampire. You have to put it on top, so you're not getting card advantage. You are missing a draw in that sense. But it also makes it so any ways to generate tokens, give it bonuses, because it just says whenever a vampire enters the battlefield, it's not when you play a vampire. And then it also works well with like evasion and lifelink. Like, I think the ability is good. I think even without the ability to tutor for a vampire, this card would be something vampire decks would likely play. And adding that in is really nice. So I like Forerunner of the Legion.
I do too. I think there's just too much good stuff going on here in a relevant tribe, right? We've seen that vampires is a tribe that wants to have bodies. They love to have that for the different payoffs that they have. So I like Forerunner of the Legion a lot. I would give it, I think it's like a B. I'm pretty high on it.
I think I would give it a B-, but I think it is definitely a solid card.
What if I told you that I always have a Sanctum Seeker?
Well, then it's like a B+. So you actually got the rating wrong either way.
And let's move on to Imperial Ceratops. That's 4 and a white for a 3/5. It's a dinosaur at uncommon, and it has Enrage. Yes, Enrage is back in Rivals of Ixalan. Whenever it's dealt damage, you gain 2 life.
So this is
a real stop sign of a dinosaur, isn't it?
Yeah, Ravenous Daggerclaw, but it's a 3/5 instead of a 3/2, which actually does make a difference. I think this isn't going to be a solid card for the Dino ramp decks. I'm not saying those decks will necessarily be good because they haven't been in the past, but this does look like the kind of card you want for it.
It's basically impossible to attack into on the ground at 3/5. It blocks almost everything of these smaller creatures that you'll see from the aggressive decks. The real question is, do those creatures have evasion of some sort, right? Because they can just go right around this thing. I don't know. I like it. Here's the thing. I want to like it, Luis. I want this type of card to find a home in Rivals of Ixalan, and I'm certainly hoping that it does.
Yeah, I think this card's going to end up being a C. I think it's going to be solid.
Yeah, I agree. Legion Conquistador is back again. This is the same exact card that we had in Ixalan. This makes a ton of sense. I love putting this back in Rivals so that the ones that you get in Ixalan aren't stranded. It's the 2 and a white 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for more copies of itself and put them in your hand. And I just think that's really smart.
Yeah,
just
this
to
is a really sweet reprint. The Legion continues to conquest. You know, it hasn't stopped. And I will admit, Legion Conquistador is a card I think we underrated initially.
Yeah, I think so too.
And this will end up being pretty good.
C+ C level. It's still not great.
I still think it's like a C, but we had it initially at lower than that, and I don't remember our exact grade. But I think Legion Conquistador ends up being a card you're happy to play like 3 of.
Yeah, I think so too. It just does a good job in the late game of being relevant enough. And again, vampires want.
I mean, it's a 3 mana 2/2 that draws you a card. That card happens to be a 3 mana 2/2, but it still draws you a card, and it turns out that the 2/2 is good enough in the format that this was decent. So I think that Legion Conquistador earns its C and is borderline C+.
Yeah. What does Luminous Bonds do?
This is 2 and a white. It's an aura at common. Enchanted creature can't attack or block. So that's it. It's basically a pacifism. You know,
it is just literally pacifism, but for 3?
For 3. This card does exactly what you want.
I will do that.
So this is the best white common, I believe, and I think just a solid C+. Like you're not unhappy with it. It might even end up being a B- in the sense that removal is a little scarce, but I think Luminous Bonds is fine either way.
Yeah, I'll go B- on Luminous Bonds. I just think it's going to be the card that you're going to want to take at common.
Yeah.
It's weird. It makes me think like, maybe pacifism was too cheap all those years. Majestic Helop. What is this? Heliopterus. Oh man, Heliopterus. All right, that's pretty cool.
It's the majestic helicopter.
All right, it's 3 and a white for a 2/2 flying dinosaur at uncommon, and whenever it attacks another target dinosaur you control gains flying until end of turn. Okay.
So
2/2 flyer for 4 though is a little concerning.
Right, it's a little weird where you don't want this in Dino Ramp, I don't think, because the big dinosaurs, yes, it's cool to give them flying, but that deck doesn't want a 4-mana card that can't block very well, and your Colossal Dreadmaw is going to finish the game a lot of the time, whether it has flying or not. Where I think this shines is in the red-white aggressive dinosaur deck, because you don't need a ton of dinos to make this good. If you have like 4-ish ground dinos, I think this card probably justifies itself, because it's evasive, and then if you're giving a 3-power ground creature flying, you're threatening a lot of damage.
Yeah, and of course it goes bigger than that. We're talking about dinosaurs here, right? I mean, there's, there's...
Even just Frenzied Raptor, it's a 3-mana 4/2.
Yeah, and there's a green Frenzied Raptor now?
Yep.
Yeah, so like those are the type of cards that you can get in for a ton of damage quite quickly. I think you're right. I think that it does justify its cost. The fact that it's uncommon makes me think, they might have bumped the power down on this a little bit because it ended up being too good. And I think Majestic Heliopterus is probably quite strong, though, yeah, you're paying 4 mana for a 2/2, even if it does have flying, you do have to consider that. C+, B-, where are you at on this guy?
Oh, I would give Majestic Heliopterus, I think, a C.
A C.
I don't think you're going to take this card super high. It's not.
Okay.
It's not a premium 4-drop for any of the decks.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree with that for sure. Okay. I like that. C for Majestic Heliopterus. Next is Martyr of Dusk. This is a really kind of annoying but good card. 1 and a white for a 2/1 Vampire Soldier. It's common. When it dies, you get a 1/1 Vampire with lifelink.
Oh, I love this card. Martyr of Dusk is just an awesome 2-drop.
Seriously.
You're going to be really happy playing this card in any white deck. It's going to be better in Vampires because, it's a vampire and you get 2 vampires out of 1 card, which is always nice. But you put this in red-white aggro, you'll be happy. You put this in a defensive green-white deck, you'll still be happy. So there's really no way to lose with this card, like in terms of the exchanges you're making. So
no, this does seem like a premium 2-drop.
Yeah, I think Martyr of Dusk is a C+, and it's a card I'm happy with.
Too. And I think you're going to see... I keep these are the type of cards that stand out to me as the ones, the Exultant Sky Marcher, Martyr of Dusk, just that you're just going to see those all the time. Moment of Triumph is white for an instant. It's common. It says target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and you gain 2 life.
Yeah, a very simple card, a nice little combat trick. And if the format ends up similar to how it was with Triple Ixalan, then this card's going to be good. I'm still talking.
That 2 life can really matter. Yeah.
And 1-mana combat tricks were just ended up being really good.
Totally.
I do think it's still a C. I'm not advocating for any higher than that, but if in a normal format, I think this is closer to a C-. I think this is just going to be a flat C.
I think so too. Also, 1 mana +2/+2 is definitely the sweet spot for combat tricks in an aggressive format. So this is going to be one that you're going to want. So Moment of Triumph gets a C. Pride of Conquerors is next. It's 1 and a white for an instant. It's uncommon, and it says creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. But it's also got Ascend. So if you have the City's Blessing, they get +2/+2 until end of turn instead. Instant speed, 2 mana. So generally not super hot on the +1/+1 side, but I'm kind of into the +2/+2 part of it.
Is that because the +2/+2 is better than the +1/+1?
It's actually double. I ran the numbers. Yeah.
So this is another card where, unless you're happy with the front half, you really shouldn't be playing this card, because I don't think you can reliably count on getting +2/+2, at least not when the game is still in question. No,
and also it seems to have a bit of a conflict here as well, because while this can act as a finisher, especially if you get to Ascend, I view this as being in a more of an aggressive deck, right? You wanted to use this to make a big attack step and get your opponent dead. And if your game plan is to try to build out a board where you've got 10 permanents on the battlefield, well, that's kind of a longer game strategy. I mean, sure, you might just be like tokens, Pride of the Conquerors. That sounds sweet. But beyond that, if you've got 6 lands and 4 creatures, Pride of the Conquerors, while, having the City's Blessing does sound good, I'd much rather have like a more grindy or value-based finish for my Ascend cards rather than one like this.
I think Pride of the Conquerors is going to end up being like, it looks like a D+ to me. I just don't know what deck it fits in.
I mean, if there is really a sweet tokens deck, then Pride of the Conquerors is great, because you will get to Ascend with a deck like that. If you play 2 cards or maybe 3 cards during the course of the game that give you 2 permanents each, think Queen's Commission, that type of card, then Pride of the Conquerors can absolutely just be a big finisher and it'll be at home there. But beyond that, I like D plus.
But like you mentioned, how do you get to 10 permanents without trading cards off?
Exactly. It just doesn't happen. Next is, what are you doing here? Raptor Companion. That's exactly the same, 1 and a white, 3/1.
So this is a reprint I don't understand as much. Like Legion Conquistador, I first saw that. It's when I was doing the set review, it's the first on the list, and I'm like, oh wow, they reprinted Legion Conquistador. That's awesome. That makes a ton of sense. Then I came on Raptor Companion. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, why is this here?
I don't know.
Is uninteresting. Not even that good.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's just whatever.
Yeah, I can't.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't like it. I want something different. I don't know. That's kind of boring to me.
So yeah, Raptor Companion is about as at the same level as it was before, I imagine. 2 mana, 3/1. It's a dinosaur. You're going to play it in your aggro decks, regardless of whether you care about dinosaurs. You're going to play it in your dinosaur decks. So
that's right.
It looks like a C to me.
Yeah, me too. Whatever. C minus for Raptor Companion. All right, well, whatever. Sanguine Glorifier is next. It's 3 and a white for a 3/3 Vampire Cleric. This is common. And when she enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on another target vampire you control.
I like this card. It's 4/4 worth of stats if you reliably have another vampire in play. And it's a vampire with some meat on her bones. Like she's able to brawl fairly well. And she also makes it so you can push something else, through, like imagine, again, playing Skymarch Bloodletter or the 2/3 Flyer, right, on turn 3, and then playing Sanguine Glorifier on turn 4. Sounds like a good curve to me.
Yeah, it does. And the Vampire deck has a good job of keeping random vampires around, so you will almost always get to use that +1/+1 counter. Because that's the one scenario where you're like really pretty disappointed is when you don't have another vampire to put that counter on. So I think seems fine. It's like a C, right?
I would give Sanguine Glorifier a C.
Yeah, seems fine. Sky Marcher Aspirant is white for a 2/1 Vampire Soldier at uncommon. So a two powered 1-drop in a relevant tribe. I'm kind of interested already. And then it's got Ascend. It has flying as long as you have the City's Blessing.
So I kind of like this card. I do have to say that.
Do you?
People tend to think 1-drops are better than they are in limited because of how different they are in constructed. Yeah. Like a 1-drop versus a 2-drop in constructed is a world of difference, right? We're looking at this card as like, oh, does this make constructed vampires? Whereas a 2 mana 2/2 vampire is not even close. In limited, they're not that different because you never use your mana on turn 1 anyway. So even if you play this on turn 1, unless you're curving turn 1 into turn 2, it's not that exciting. You'll just play this early and then it'll be the same as a 2-drop later.
Yeah.
The City's Blessing part does mean this gets relevant at some point later in the game when normally 1 and 2 mana cards aren't relevant. But overall, this card is nothing special. I think it's a C. I don't think it's worse than that, but I don't think it's something I'm aspiring to for or anything like that.
The thing I really want to know is just if you actually end up getting Ascend somewhat often in this Vampires deck because of the tokens thing.
Yeah.
Because if that's a thing...
I'm still guessing no.
Yeah, I kind of am too. And this is a very, very fragile card. I mean, you play it on turn 1 and you do feel great. Don't get me wrong. But then, it trades off very, very quickly and sometimes with, even a random token or something. C
for Sky Marcher Aspirant.
Yeah, what about Snubhorn Sentry?
This is white for an 0/3 dinosaur at common. And it is Ascend and gets +3/+0 when you have the City's Blessing. I think this card's wildly unplayable. It's very funny. It looks really weird.
It's funny, yeah.
But the flavor text is funny too. But I'm going to give Snubhorn Sentry. Well, I'm going to give it the snub, right? Like I think that this card is generously a D- because you might side it in against a deck full of 2/1s. But realistically, this card is an F.
Yeah, I like D- for Snubhorn Sentry based on flavor text alone. Squire's Devotion is next. It's 2 and a white for an enchantment aura. It enchants a creature. This is common. The creature gets +1/+1 and lifelink. And when Squire's Devotion enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 vampire token with lifelink.
So this is a Mark of the Vampire, but instead of +2/+2, you get +1/+1 and a 1/1 lifelink. Also, it's one cheaper.
And it's cheaper. Yeah, interesting. This seems good to me.
Yeah, this card's good.
I hate these cards generally, but this one, as long as you can stick it, it spits out a vampire. So it's like not your worst case scenario, assuming that it resolves, is that you're going to get, 2 and a white for a 1/1 token. But your best case is actually quite strong. +1/+1 and lifelink, that can open up an attack you didn't have and completely change race math as well.
I think that Squire's Devotion is going to end up being like a C+. Like you're just going to be happy with this card.
I want to give it a D, but it's not. These type of cards are just gone up a lot. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Squire's Devotion is a C+, and you should probably play it in your aggressive vampire decks. Sun Sentinel is next. It's 1 and a white for a 2/2 vigilance, and this one, as you mentioned earlier, Tribeless. It's a human soldier. It's common. Still, a 2/2 vigilance for 2. That's a real card.
Yeah, this is playable. I think this is.
Yeah.
This is the fact that it's doesn't belong to a particular tribe just means it's a lot of potential power that's lost, because like if you look at Raptor Companion, the 3/1 for 2, sometimes later in the game this is just super relevant that it's a dinosaur. Like it just opens the door for a lot of bonuses. This just doesn't have that. So I think Sun Sentinel's a step worse. I think it's a C-.
Okay. Still, I was just going to go C. It's like, look at this. There's a class of cards that say sometimes you need a 2-drop, right? Raptor Companion fits in that, and I think Sun Sentinel's a fine addition to that class. So I'm going C on Sun Sentinel.
Yeah, I'll give it a C-, but close enough.
Last white card is called Sun-Crested Pterodon. It's 4 and a white for a 2/5 flying dinosaur at common, and it has vigilance as long as you control another dinosaur.
So this card is pretty good, I think, at stabilizing if you're in a defensive dino deck, but it's not a card an aggressive deck wants at all.
No, and it's super defensive, right? Like, I like cards like this. I like 2/5 flyers, but like, I don't know. This feels like the format, not necessarily a format for it.
No, so I think Sun-Crested Pterodon is going to be like a D+.
I think it's a D. Yeah, I just think it's like a card you'll play occasionally, but you probably don't want that often. Okay, that's going to do it for white. Any thoughts on white?
Aggressive. I mean, we saw some good attackers here. We didn't see a whole lot in the way of good blockers. Maybe the 3/5 for the Imperial Ceratops, that could do some stuff. Everdon Champion, who knows?
Right. Okay, let's move on to blue. Our first card is called Aquatic Incursion. It's 3 and a blue for an enchantment at uncommon. It says when it enters the battlefield, you get 2 1/1 blue merfolk creature tokens with hexproof, and you can pay 3 and a blue to make target merfolk unable to be blocked this turn.
This card is kind of sweet. So at the base level, paying 4 mana for 2 1/1 hexproof is not worth it.
No.
Right? That's below the bar. When you add the ability to give a merfolk unblockable, you're talking a late game plan, right? You hope to give a 3-power creature unblockable, 4-power creature unblockable, and you might want merfolk for some other reason. In a merfolk deck, there are bonuses for having a lot of merfolk. So you add all that together, and I think this makes it into most merfolk decks, but it's definitely not a card non-merfolk decks will want, and it's not a card I think you should take early. You should only take this if you're pretty locked into merfolk and have rewards for kind of accumulating all these merfolk.
Right, because the thing to keep in mind here is that you have to pay 4 mana to make a merfolk unblockable. That's got to be kind of your primary game plan. It's just like pay 4, and that's basically your turn.
Once you started doing that, you're kind of locked into doing it.
Exactly, and that's a big, that's a big cost. And then again, if you're on the defensive a bit, the 2 1/1s aren't super fantastic. But I agree with you. I think that this thing does give you a viable late game plan, especially since sometimes that does happen with merfolk, where you're like, I'm going to get ahead, I'm going to use combat tricks to get my creatures through or kill my opponent's blockers. But then it kind of sputters out a bit, and these decks don't have reach. You have no burn spells, you have no way to like kill your opponent.
One with the wind is arguably reach.
Good point. That's true. But usually, I assume that the game's over if somebody resolved a 1 with the wind. I mean, I've seen it for this format. Where do we put it? It's not a build around. Like, you can just play this in a merfolk deck.
Yeah, it's not a card I see an early Aquatic Incursion, and I'm like, all right, time to build the Aquatic Incursion deck.
No.
I think this is going to land somewhere like D+.
That's why I have it too, D+. Next is Crashing Tide. It's 2 and a blue for a sorcery, and it says... It's common. It says Crashing Tide has flash as long as you control a merfolk. In other words, it's an instant if you have a merfolk. Return target creature to its owner's hand. I like that. Draw a card. So your worst case scenario is 2 and a blue sorcery, bounce a creature, draw a card?
Oh yeah, this card is great.
Oh, I'm in for that.
And sometimes it'll just have flash because you'll have a merfolk. But even if it doesn't, you would just play this as a sorcery bounce draw.
Totally. This is actually really good and really annoying for these auras that we've been talking about too.
For sure, there's some good bounce spells at common and blue that make those auras a lot weaker. Crashing Tide looks like a C+ to me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I do wish it was an instant all the time, but yeah, you can't have everything, I guess. What does Curious Obsession do?
So this is blue. It's a single mana for an uncommon aura that gives the creature +1/+1, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So it's Curiosity with +1/+1.
Okay, that's good. Jeez.
The drawback is, at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't attack with the creature this turn, sacrifice Curious Obsession. So you don't have to attack with this creature, but you have to attack with something.
Okay.
I think this card is quite good because Curiosity, which is this without the +1/+1 or the attack clause, was never a card that was great, but it didn't modify the stats. Giving your creature +1/+1 means they have a 2/3 and you have a 2/2. You all of a sudden play this attack and you get your card back. You paid 1 mana, you got your card back already, and you got 3 damage through it. Even if something happens,
now you've got this threat that like threatens to take over the entire game by drawing you a bunch of extra cards, right?
Right. Even if they deal with it right away, you already are at parity. And if they don't, they're going to look at this creature in play and be like, wow, I guess I have to leave 2 blockers back because if you have a bounce spell, you attack and then you draw a card. Like, this card is very good. So I think Curious Obsession is going to end up being a C+. And finally, we have a good aura in this set.
Yeah, right. Better with flyers, better with evasive creatures. That goes without saying.
Oh, yeah. This is the kind of card that makes you feel pretty rewarded for putting Mistcloak Herald into your deck, which is a card we're going to get to soon.
And what did you say you gave it for a grade?
I think C+ for Curious Obsession.
C+ for Curious Obsession. I like that.
Look, it's not going to go in all decks, but the decks where it's good, it's going to be really good, and it's going to lead to some pretty sick games.
Yeah, just make sure you're picky about when you cast it. Ideally, when you can get in that one hit for sure and force the issue. And then like Louis said, if they untap and kill it, you can live with it. Deadeye Rig Hauler. What does this one do?
Besides have a weird name, it's a 3 and a blue for a 3/2 human pirate at common, and it has Raid. If you attack this turn, you may return target creature to its owner's hand when this enters the battlefield. So this is 4 mana 3/2 ETB bounce something as long as you attack this turn. I think this card's really good.
Me too.
It's not that hard to get Raid, as we've seen. There weren't just tons of good payoffs, and this is a very good payoff. 4 mana 3/2 bounce a creature is really, really good.
Yeah, especially when you're attacking, which is exactly what it's encouraging you to do. I like Deadeye Rig Hauler, to the shock of absolutely nobody. C+.
I like C+ for Deadeye Rig Hauler.
Yeah, I mean, this
card's going to be good even not in pirate decks. This is by no means a pirate card.
By the way, that's now 2. We've done 4 cards or something, and 2 of them are already quite strong. Yeah, and good at blowing out auras. Maybe the day of the aura is beyond us. Expel from Arazka is 1 and a blue for an instant. It's uncommon. And it has Ascend. It says return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If you got the city's blessing, you may put that permanent on top of its owner's library instead. My God, another bounce spell.
Yeah, this one's uncommon at least.
Yeah.
This card seems fun. I wouldn't be unhappy to put this card in my deck. And at some point in the game, it becomes Time Ebb, right? It puts something on top instead, which is nice. But other than that, I'm not super unhappy just playing this on the face of it. So I'm not worried about the Ascend part very much.
Yeah. Are you happy playing it without Ascend? Sure. And this is the type of card that I tend to overvalue a little bit, I think, or value higher than most, because I do like the ability to interact for cheap at instant speed, even if it isn't necessarily killing my opponent's creature. What do you give Expel from Rosca?
I think it's just a C. I think it's just mostly 2 mana bounce a creature, which feels like a C in this format.
Okay. I'm going to go C+. And again, my reasoning is it's so cheap, you just don't get any other ways to do that. And this can break up some really annoying starts. Flood of Recollection is blue for a sorcery. It's uncommon. It says return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand, and then you exile Flood of Recollection.
Nah, this is just an F.
Yeah, it's just an F.
Basically, for this card to do anything, you have to not only have a lot of instants and sorceries, you have to have one go to your graveyard and be worth paying 2 mana to get it back. That's just not something you do in Limited.
No, and it's double blue. Yeah, it's really not a good card. So Flood of Recollection, get out of here. You're an F. Can you read this next one?
This is Hornswoggle, which you'll have to say a lot on coverage over this.
I don't want to have to say that. What the hell does Hornswoggle even mean?
Well, you got Hornswoggled, and what it does is 2 and a blue. It's an instant and uncommon. Counter target creature spell, put a treasure token into play.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
It's not a great spell, but creatures are oftentimes what matter in limited. And, it fixes your mana, gets you a little bit of a bonus. I don't know. What's the old card? The, 2 and a blue counter target
Exclude?
creature? Yeah.
That was a counter target creature draw a card.
Draw a card.
This is significantly worse than that.
Oh, yeah, that wasn't the one I was thinking of, I guess.
Oh, remove soul, but that costs 2 mana.
Yeah, it wasn't it either. I think I've made up a card that doesn't exist.
That's what it sounds like.
Do we like Hornswoggle?
Not particularly.
Oh, can we just call it completely unplayable and then I never have to read it on coverage?
It's not that either. Basically, it's a 3-mana counter with marginal upside, and it can only counter creatures. That ends up being something like a D+ in my book.
Yeah, I think so,
means
too.
that you will see it.
Generally speaking, counter spells get a little bit lower of a grade from Lewis and I for that reason. Next is Kite Sail Corsair. It's 1 and a blue for a 2/1 at common. It's a human pirate, and it says it has flying as long as it's attacking.
I'm telling you, blocking is just not high on the list of things you can do in this format. This card's really good.
I don't like seeing cards like this. It makes me by the way, it's very good. But man, it just this reminds me of Zendikar. Like way back in the day, Zendikar, that was like all these 2-drops just said, and by the way, you can't block, and they were all common.
Yeah, I mean that's what Kite Sail Corsair does. It's an efficient flyer. This is going to be a high pick for any aggressive blue deck, which I think is looking like almost all the decks. Merfolk and Pirates are both very aggressive. So I think Kite Sail Corsair ends up being also like a C+. Like this card is a card you're really happy to have in your deck.
I think so too. It might even end up in the B- range. Mist Cloaked Herald. You mentioned this card a minute when we were talking about the Merfolk, when we were talking about the gold cards.
Yes, this is blue for a 1/1 Merfolk Warrior common, and it can't be blocked. 1 mana, 1/1 unblockable. And see, this is where I look back and say, like, that episode we just talked about last week, the top 10 biggest traps in limited.
Yep.
And it was like 1/1s for 1 with marginal upside, which is this would be a card I would have used as an example then as a trap. I no longer believe that to be the case. I think this card is playable. I think you're going to see a lot of this card in play.
I think so too. The funny part is that it always depends on the format now, but we have seen enough formats of late that have rewarded cheap, aggressive plays and even playing 1-mana creatures that I agree. Mist Cloaked Herald is the type of card that I think you will see on the battlefield. Now, I don't want to go nuts with it. I really want to augment this card in order for it to be decent. On its own, it's still pretty low impact.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this card is great, but I think that it's playable because there's a lot of Merfolk synergies. You put Curious Obsession on this, you're just going to win. You put various other auras on it, it's good, and it enables raids. So I think that Mist Cloaked Herald's going to end up being like a C-.
Yeah, I'm gonna say C- as well for Mist Cloaked Herald, and I'm gonna remind people that you don't always have this card on turn 1. And that is a big part of the downside of it, is that sometimes you draw it on turn 5 and it has a minimal impact on the game. Next is Negate. New artwork. 1 and a blue instant counter target non-creature spell at common. Sideboard card, right?
Always a sideboard card. Always very good at being a sideboard card. So
yeah.
it's always like a sideboard B, but not a card I prioritize because it's just not something I think that you need to have. But it's always nice to have one.
It is. Situations in which you bring it in are when there's cards that you can't beat that are non-creatures, or if you see just a lot of removal, you can bring in a Negate as well, or a lot of non-creature spells that you care about. River Darter is next. It's 2 and a blue for a 2/3 Merfolk Warrior at common, and it cannot be blocked by dinosaurs.
Yeah, this card is the vanilla Merfolk that you play if you just need more Merfolk.
Right.
Because, in
many scenarios, it's just a 2/3 for 3.
Yes, it's nice that it can't be blocked by dinosaurs, but that's just not a huge upside. It's a sideboard card. If you play against the all dinosaur deck, sure, bring this in. But I'm not really that thrilled about River Darter. It looks like a D+ to me.
Yeah, I'm just going to give it a D. This is a kind of curve filler sideboard type card. What about Riverwise Augur?
This is 3 and a blue. It's a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard at uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards.
Hello.
Cards. Then put 2 cards from your hand back on top of the library.
So you end up a card there?
So at the very base level, this is 3 and a blue 2/2 draw card. But it ends up being a lot more than that for a couple reasons. One, because you put back 2 cards, what you can do is, let's say you play this on turn 4. you put back a land and then another card. You draw your other card and then you play your explore creature and hit the land. Or if you want to hit a non-creature, you put that back and you explore, hit the non-creature. So you guaranteed know what you're exploring into. You can put your worst card back and mill it with explore, for example.
That's pretty cool. If you have any type of shuffle effect, you can do a mini brainstorm here as well. And
Evolving Wilds is in the set too, I believe. So that makes Riverwise Augur a lot more interesting.
This is powerful.
This is Brainstorm. You cast Brainstorm
when
you play this.
Yeah. And remember, the key to that is that you're drawing the 3, but you're taking 2 from your whole hand, not from those 3 cards. That's the key. You can put cards that you've been holding in your hand or whatever forever. The truth is, though, is that Brainstorm without shuffles isn't, amazing.
Yeah. So... don't think this card's just an Ancestral Recall. This isn't just a draw 3. But if you have good ways to work with it, it's good. And 4-mana 2/2 Merfolk that draws you a card, that's not the end of the world.
No, it's really not.
This card seems fine.
No, I think it seems quite fine too. I would actually give it like a C+. I was going to say C, but I think that manipulating your library and finding your bombs and stuff in out of a, call it a 30-card deck by the time you cast this thing is quite powerful. You're seeing 10% of your remaining library in many cases.
Yeah, I'm going to give Riverwise Augur a C+.
I like it too. All right, so another reprint. We've got Sailor of Means back at it again. The 2 and a blue 1/4 that you get a treasure.
Must continue.
Apparently. So I don't know. I guess I kind of feel similarly about this one as I do about the Raptor Companion.
Yep, it's a little odd.
Yeah, it's like a C, maybe a C-.
I think Sailor of Means is just going to be a C.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So it's back again. Next card, Sea Legs. It's blue for an enchantment aura with flash. It enchants a creature. It's a common, by the way. The creature gets +0/+2 as long as it's a pirate. Otherwise, it gets -2/-0.
Sea Legs run. This card is very sweet.
It's kind of funny.
I think this is super good flavor.
No, it's bad flavor.
How's it bad flavor?
Sea Legs is the thing that you have.
Yeah, the pirate has it, so it gets +0/+2. And if you don't have it, it gives -2/-0. So it's kind of like this is...
no, it doesn't make sense.
This is like a
the reason boat. That this should be called Rocking Boat, not Sea Legs, right? The pirate has Sea Legs, therefore is unaffected or maybe even better on a rocking boat. Where look at the poor guy on the right just hurling. Oh, that's brutal. Or the pirate's just like, what up? No problem. Anyway, is this card any good? Is this the Is this the Blue Swords to Plowshares or what?
This is the Blue Skullduggery. This is So if your pirate tangles with their creature early and you cast this and win the combat, you end up with like a 2/4 on turn 3. Like you play a 2/2, they play a 2/2, you attack, they block, you're like Sea Legs, bam. If you end up brawling and you have a non-pirate and you give their creature -2/-0, it's a decent combat trick. And you can just throw this. It's an aura. It's permanent. You can just throw this on their 2/2 flyer and make it so they can't hit you with it anymore.
Yeah, I like that part a lot. The fact that it stays and can blank even bigger. I mean, sometimes they have a 4/4 that you can't deal with and you put this thing on it and, now they're only hitting you for 2 a turn or you even have blocks. That's pretty good. Sea Legs looks actually quite powerful. Or Rocking Boat, as it's known colloquially. Yes.
I like Sea Legs. I think that Sea Legs deserves, just a C, not a C+. But
no, it's not C+ legs. It's just Sea Legs. This next one is a card that I think you and I will both like. It's Secrets of the Golden City. We talked about it briefly last week. It's 1 blue for a sorcery at common. Draw 2 cards. So 1 blue, draw 2. It's similar to Divination. It's a little bit harder to cast, but it's got Ascend. If you have the City's Blessing, you draw 3 instead.
I think this card's not very good.
Come on, man. Just let me have one thing.
Well, part of the strength of Divination, as someone who's cast a lot of Divinations, is you use it to hit your 4th land drop. But if you draw 2 mountains and an island and Secrets of the Golden City, it's just not going to do anything for you.
No, the mana cost is real for sure, especially if you're trying to slam it on turn 3.
This looks like a card that might be interesting and constructed because you have mana bases good enough to cast Divination reliably on turn 3, even when it's double blue, and then later in the game it's a draw 3. But for limited, I just don't. First of all, I don't think that you're in the market for 3 mana draw 2 anyway, and at a harder cost. And the fact that it has Ascend just doesn't matter all that much. So this card looks like a D to me.
Well, I'm going to take one for the team and run out, the All Sailor of Means blocking deck, and then my win condition is going to be like 3 secrets of the Golden City.
Oh, so you're going to deck yourself once you have 10 permanents.
Yeah, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. C minus.
I like D on C.
No, come on. I'm trying to talk you up a little.
I'm not going to budge on this one.
All right. Fine. I'll go D plus on Secrets of the Golden City. That's the lowest I can go. Silvergill Adept. This is a reprint and a pretty powerful one, at least from constructed purposes. How good is it in limited, though?
It's quite good. This is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 merfolk at uncommon. It's a wizard. As an additional cost to cast Silvergill Adept, reveal a merfolk card from your hand or pay 3. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card.
So I have to pay 5 mana for this thing if I don't reveal that
if you don't have a merfolk in hand. But that's not that hard to have a merfolk in hand.
No.
Plus, late in the game, when you don't have merfolk in hand, you just pay 5 for this. It's just not the end of the world to do that.
Not at all.
And 2 mana, 2/1 draw card is excellent, especially in a relevant tribe. So I think Silvergill Adept gets a B.
I do too. I think this is the type of card that is going to be one of the premium cards for the Merfolk deck. It's just awesome when you get to cast it on turn 2. Next is called Siren Reaver. It's 3 and a blue for a 3/2 Siren Pirate at uncommon. It's got flying and it costs 1 less to cast if you attacked with a creature this turn, thanks to Raid.
So this card is good because 4 mana 3/2 is fine, nothing exciting, but 3 mana 3/2 is good. Mm-hmm. And if you can follow this up after a 2-drop, then you're going to really put your opponent on the back foot. Yeah. So I think Siren Reaver is going to end up being a C+.
Yeah, I think so too. 3 power in the air on turn 3 is nasty if you can set it up. Next is Slippery Scoundrel. It's 2 and a blue for a 2/2 human pirate at uncommon. As long as you have the city's blessing, Slippery Scoundrel has hexproof and can't be blocked. So obviously has Ascend. So what you're looking at here is this is going to put your, would I play this on its base level to the test here, Luis? A 3 mana 2/2. That's it.
This is not a card you want.
No. Later, with the Ascend thing turned, with the city's blessing, it's great, but like.
Yeah, but it's not even insane. A 2/2 hexproof unblockable on turn 8 or whatever is not something I'm all that excited about.
It does end the game. I mean, I could see it being kind of a, you've set up the shields or whatever, and then you get your.
But at that point, I'd rather have like a 5 mana 3/4 flyer, because that's the sort of card that's good in the late game and can actually do something relevant before then. Whereas 3 mana 2/2 is just not impressive. So
yeah, and 5 mana 3/4 flyer is an unremarkable card that we had.
No, that's not even a good card. Right. That's just a mediocre one. So I think Slippery Scoundrel is pretty bad. I'm going to give Slippery Scoundrel a D.
I'll go D plus on Slippery Scoundrel because I think you're going to get Ascend sometimes in this Pirates deck thanks to Random Treasure. Soul of the Rapids. Oh no, this is 3 blue. It's a common elemental. It's a 3/2 flying with hexproof. What do you think about this? Obviously doesn't tangle particularly well at only 2 toughness and 5 power, but flying means that there's not that many creatures that can tangle with it, and it has hexproof. They can't kill it.
I don't think this card's particularly good. You just can't.
I'm really glad to hear you say that.
You just can't pay 5 mana for a creature that blocks so poorly. And yes, it has hexproof, so they can't target it. But there's a lot of like 2/2 flyers in the set, and it just does not interact well with those either. So Solar Rapids looks like a D+.
Okay, I like that for it too. I know a lot of people were annoyed when they saw it because of hexproof. Yeah, but I agree with you. I think that it's very expensive. And the only 2 toughness means that, and even then, even only 3 power means that, it just doesn't really hold up. I mean, Air Elemental is just way better than this, right?
Oh, yeah, not even close.
Right. So, let's keep that in mind. Spirewinder is next. This is 3 and a blue for a 2/3 flying snake. It's common, and it has Ascend. It gets +1/+1 as long as you've got the City's Blessing. So you can get a 3/4 flyer for 4 with the City's Blessing, or again, putting it to the Luis test here, would you pay 4 mana for a 2/3 flyer?
I think that you're not super unhappy about doing that.
No, I think I would do that. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a fine card. This to me seems like just a solid C. 2/3 flying for 4 is like shrug okay. And if you ever get the City's Blessing, it's nice. It's a 3/4 flyer for 4. That's pretty good.
So this ends up, I think, being a solid card in the middle of the game and then a decent card in the late game. So overall, this card looks like a C.
Yeah, it's a C for me as well. Sworn Guardian is next. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/3. It's a Merfolk Warrior.
This is
I'm gonna
exactly what
swear
it
this
looks
card
like.
off. Yeah, it's filler at best.
Straight up filler. So this looks like a D to me.
It's just a D. Yeah, it's the type of card that if you're desperate
It's
for
a fine
2-drops
sideboard card.
or Merfolk, you can do it. Yeah, it does.
If they have a bunch of 2/2s and 3/1s.
Does it ever block anything?
Well, if they have a bunch of 2/2s and 3/1s, I would board this card in if your deck's a little slow.
Okay. Last blue card is called Water Knot. It's 1 blue. For an enchantment aura at common, it enchants a creature. When it enters the battlefield, you tap the creature doesn't untap on its controller's untap.
A fine piece of removal. This will lock down.
Yeah. This is claustrophobia, right?
Yep, exactly. Claustrophobia. Basically anything. So it's going to be a C+. It's going to be
I'm going to go B-. Like, the thing is that 3 mana unconditional removal in a color that doesn't normally get it tends to overperform in my experience. And I think Water Knot's going to be like a high pick and a card you're going to play a lot of. 3 mana for just get rid of that thing is really good. And it even gives you the bonus, which is sometimes a drawback, admittedly, of, there's some cards that care about being in the graveyard or can come back or that kind of thing, and they don't get to do that.
Yeah, it will sometimes be better than actually killing the creature. Sometimes be worse if it has like a static ability. But
yeah, I mean,
overall,
is this worse or better than Luminous Bonds?
I think this is better.
Right.
So
yeah, B- for Water Knot for me.
All right, that's fine. I'll bump it up to a B-. I could buy that.
Yeah, blue looks kind of a mixed bag like it usually is.
Yeah, it looks fine, but it's hard to get a sense of exactly where it'll end up. Though it does seem like it's aggressive. I mean, it does. The good cards do seem aggressive here as well.
Yeah, Kitesail, Corsair, but then also random Secrets of the Golden City. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on it. Moving on to black. We've got Arterial Flow as the first black card. It's 1 black for an uncommon. It's sorcery. Speed. It says each opponent discards 2 cards. If you control a vampire, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life.
I don't think that you're going to want to cast this in a non-vampire deck in game 1 very often. It's a fine sideboard card. Discard is always good post-board against the right decks, against like slow decks. But once you had the rider of drain them for 2, then I'm kind of in for it, because
that's
kind
of a big rider, yeah.
Yeah, because that means you spent your turn not affecting the board, but dealing 2 to them and gaining 2. That kind of makes it so you actually make a little bit of progress. So I think this card is playable in vampire decks and is a good sideboard card outside of that. But I wouldn't call it a sideboard card. I think it's just going to be a C. Just know that you want some vampires to go along with it.
Yeah, I feel like that too. Of course, a little bit better in sealed in most cases, and
for sure.
Yeah, seems to fit that vampire theme well. Canal Monitor is next. It's 4 and a black for a lizard. It's common. It's a 5/3. I'm done talking about it.
This card is a D+.
Yeah, it's just whatever, right? It's like a high-powered 5-drop. Yeah, well, I was done saying what it did.
Oh, I took it literally. This card's a D+.
Okay, D+. Next card is Dark Inquiry. It's 2 and a black for a sorcery. At common, it says target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card.
This is a straight-up sideboard card. You just can't spend 3 mana and not affect the board and not even get card advantage. Like Arterial Flow at least gives you card advantage. This is just take their best card, but you spent 3 mana to do it. And got to say, a lot of cards are interchangeable in this format. So I'm in for a Dark Inquiry sideboard. It's like a sideboard C, just against decks with big bombs.
Yeah, your point was really strong there, though. Like, take a look at the last, red-white deck that you drafted and just do a few sample draws from it, and you'll see, well, a few of these cards are a little better than the worst than the ones in the pack, but like they're not dismantling your game plan. And I'll tell you what, in a fast format, spending 3 mana, not affecting the board can have deadly consequences. So yeah, I like that grade. Sideboard C or whatever for Dark Inquiry. Dinosaur Hunter is next. It's 1 and a black for a 2/2 human pirate at common. And whenever it deals damage to a dinosaur, you destroy that creature.
This card's pretty funny.
Dino Death Touch?
Dino Death Touch.
Okay. Otherwise, it's a 2/2 pirate for 2.
Which is playable.
Yeah,
so,
where are we at on that baseline? That's okay, right? Like you can.
I think this card would be a C without the dinosaur text, and is a C with the dinosaur text.
I was gonna say it doesn't change it much.
Nope.
But random upside. By the way, what's wrong with dinosaurs? Now we got a creature that can't be blocked by them, and then one specific we needed to take down the dinosaur horde here. This was the oppressive thing in this format.
Dinos were too good coming in. So.
Yeah, so we're keeping him in check. All right, a C for Dinosaur Hunter. Man. Dusk Charger is next. This is when we mentioned last week when we were talking about Ascend. It's 3 and a black for a 3/3 horse. It's common, and it gets +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing.
Yeah, mediocre before the City's Blessing and good afterwards. But
just okay though, right?
Yeah, because by the time you have the City's Blessing, your opponent can cast their 6-drops.
Exactly. Like it might not even be big enough to brawl profitably. So I'm not a huge fan of Dust Charger because I'm not excited about either checkpoint, right? 3/3 for 4 and a non-tribe is like pretty bad. And then, yes, occasionally you'll get the 5/5 for 4, but you're not getting it on turn 4 or 5. You're getting it on turn 9 or 10, where it's not as good there either. So I'm not a huge fan. I think Dust Charger probably falls in like the D+ category for me.
Yeah, I like D+ for Dust Charger.
This next card I like a lot. Dusk Legion Zealot. It's 1 and a black for a 1/1 vampire soldier. It's common, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose a life.
This card is sweet.
I love cards like this.
A nice little 2-drop for any deck, but it's nice in vampires when you get to actually care about the fact that you have this little 1/1. Like this game piece means more in vampires than it does in pirates, but you're going to play it either way. So I think Dusk Legion Zealot passes the test. This card, I think it's still. Would you give it a C+?
I would. I absolutely would. Yeah.
It's C or C+, but I think C+ is fine.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, like, it smooths out your draws. Yes, you lose a life, but it'll block something bigger than that anyway, so you're going to get it back, and it's an irrelevant tribe. So I like C+ for Dusk Legion Zealot. Fathom Fleet Border. This is a 2 and a black for a 3/3 Orc Pirate at common. So I said I like 3/3s for 3 in these type of formats, and this is a good one. When it enters the battlefield, you lose 2 life unless you control another pirate.
We've come far from the days of Serpent Warrior. That was a 3-mana 3/3 that when it comes to the battlefield, enters the battlefield, you lose 3 life.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this one's only 2 and it's conditional. I like this card. Look, I want to, if I'm trying to be aggressive, a 3/3 on curve in a relevant tribe is great. I don't care about the life loss if I'm the aggressor. And also, I don't plan on losing it all the time. Oftentimes, these decks are looking to curve out and it will have a 1 or 2 drop that's a pirate anyway. And you just get a 3/3 for 3 in that case, which I'm really happy with.
Yeah, I like Fathom Fleet Border a lot. This looks like a C+ to me.
Me too. I just, if I'm trying to beat down, that's the kind of card I want.
It can also block. Like, even in a control deck, this is a fine card.
Yeah, totally.
If you play this on turn 3, sure, you lose 2 life, but then you don't lose any life because they can't attack you.
Right. Very good blocker. Next is Forerunner of the Coalition. So this is the Pirate Forerunner. It's 2 and a black for a 2/2 human pirate at uncommon. It has the Forerunner text. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a pirate card, put it on top, and then shuffle. And then the other text, though, is whenever another pirate enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent, so it's a little different, just loses a life.
This text is a little less impressive.
It is, right? Like that feels a little, I mean, sure, if you're trying to be aggressive, you'll take all the life loss you can get, but I don't know, it lacks the punch that the Vampiric Tutor had.
Yeah, and you also don't have ways to make pirate tokens, so you're not going to get as much action off of the trigger as you would if you were in Vampires.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
This card still seems playable. I think it's a C. I don't think it's much higher than that. Though it goes up in value if you have a really good pirate to search for.
Exactly. Every hostage taker you have makes Forerunner of the Coalition like a grade better. I'm going to go C+ on it. I just think that these cards, searching up the thing that you want at the right time is good. And one thing to remember, by the way, for all of these, they're May abilities on the search. So, if you need to draw a land, you can't afford to have another, non-land card on top of your library. You can still cast this and block or whatever and not search it up. What does Golden Demise do?
It's 1 black for a sorcery at uncommon. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. If you have the City's Blessing, instead only creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn.
Yeah, so this is, we've been talking about this. So some of these Ascend cards kind of grow with the game in a way that you would really hope that they would. Like Secrets of the Golden City, the card draw one, right? That's when you want to draw the extra card, is late in the game when you've got a bunch of lands and permanents and you're looking to finish off the game. But Golden Demise, yeah, it's still good, right? -2/-2 late in the game is still good, but like, dang, if you could have that one-sided earlier in the game, oh my God, it's just a complete beating. Like, it takes down these cheap aggressive decks in a big way. But instead, you kind of have to play around it yourself and just settle for the Infest. Isn't that what the card was called?
This is Infest, and I think Infest still plays well. It's the kind of card that you might want if you can build your deck around it. I don't know how that deck looks like because there's not very many creatures that survive it. But if you can make it so your 2-drops, some have 3 toughness, and you maybe just don't play a 2-drop. Like, they're on the play, they play a 2-drop, a 2/2. You just don't play anything even though you have them. Next turn they play a 3-drop that can get hit by Golden Demise, then yeah, all of a sudden you're pretty far ahead.
This does seem like a premium tool for non-aggressive decks specifically to fight the aggressive decks in the format. It just does. I think this is a type of card that you could build around a bit, and that you can, especially if you can get a couple of them, it's an uncommon, that you could, really put a hurting on, like vampire decks, for example. Yikes.
Oh yeah, this card will take some names, and I think that in the end, I don't think it's an insane bomb or anything like that, but I think it's like probably a C+.
Yeah. A Golden Demise, C+. Very powerful effect if timed correctly. Grasping Scoundrel is next. It's black for a 1/1 human pirate at common, and it gets +1/+0 as long as it's attacking.
Yeah, a nice little beater.
Yeah, 2/1 on the attacks, 1/1 on the blocks.
I think this is going to end up being like a C-. It's nothing spectacular because it can't block well, and sometimes an X1 is just not able to get in there anyway.
Yeah, but we've seen enough to know that there's certainly aggressive decks available in the format, and this one's a pirate, and it enables raid quite well. You get it down early, you can get raid on your 2-drop or 3-drop, and then, they're going to trade, right? Like if they play a 2/2 and you've already attacked them once with Grasping Scoundrel, they're probably going to be like, fine, I'll trade it off for this thing, and you get your raid trigger and get your value out of the Scoundrel if you turn 1 it. Later in the game, horrendous. Really gets bad. C-, D+.
Yeah, I like C-. I think the aggressive Pirates deck will play it off enough that it's a C- still.
Okay. What about Gruesome Fate?
It says 2 and a black. It's a sorcery at common. It says each opponent loses 1 life for each creature you control.
Generally, I hate cards like this.
That's because they're generally bad.
Yeah. I think I still hate cards like this.
Oh, yes. I think part of the problem is that if you're an aggressive deck, then you're trading off your creatures, and you're going to draw this, and it deals 2 or 3 damage, and that's just not enough. So what deck? But if you care about their life throw, because all this does is damage to your opponent's face. It does not deal. Yeah. It does not get your card back or anything. How do you end up in a deck that can deal 6 and care about dealing 6 at the same time? That seems pretty difficult.
That is a very difficult tightrope walk, and I think Gruesome Fate is bad. I think it's just terrible. Kind of card that you will lose to occasionally, and you just have to kind of suck it up. But I think you shouldn't be playing it. I'm going to give it an F. I think it's just awful.
I like an F for Gruesome Fate. Send a message.
Yeah. Impale. Speaking of sending a message, This is a solid removal spell. 2 black sorcery, common. So this is your common black removal spell. Destroy target creature. That's simple.
All right. That is pretty simple. It's also good. 4 mana is a price I'm willing to pay. So I'm good to Impale at like a B-, I think.
Yeah, I think B- as well. It's not an instant. It's not particularly mana efficient, and it's not splashable, but whatever. Like you said, 4 mana is the right price. And you're looking at it. There's your black removal spell for the set. Mausoleum Harpy is next. It's 4 and a black for a creature Harpy. It is a 3/3 at uncommon. It's got flying. So 5 mana 3/3 flyer. Ascend. Whenever another creature you control dies, if you have the city's blessing, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Harpy.
So this is a case where I'm not really happy with the front end, and I'm not even that impressed with the back end.
Me neither.
Like, when you ascend, it's not like this gets +2/+2. It has the ability to maybe get some +1/+1 counters.
It's conditional in the sense that you need to have the city's blessing and you need to have a creature die, and the payoff is it gets kind of bigger. Ugh, that's way too conditional. Like if I just would have read this as 4 and a black 3/3 flying, take Ascend off the card, I would have been like, okay, yeah, I'd play that. I wouldn't have been. That's not an A. And somehow we're gonna get that 20% of the time or whatever.
Yeah.
No, I'm off it. This card seems reasonable. I mean, a 3/3 flyer for 5 is not like an embarrassing card, but it's certainly not, something awesome.
I think that Mausoleum Harpy is a card that you're going to be unhappy playing. So it looks like a D+ to me.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a C-. It's a C-. It's still a 5 mana 3/3 flyer.
Yeah, that baseline is still playable. I think I like C- better on Mausoleum Harpy, and then sometimes you'll go off. Moment of Craving, 1 and a black instant at common. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. You gain 2 life.
Oh, yeah.
There's your other black removal spell at common.
Very efficient. Also, not only is it efficient, you gain 2 life, so it makes up for any previous damage you've taken.
It's very good. Also, of course, it combines with combat. Interesting.
It also triggers your Famished Paladin and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Ooh, that's really good, actually. Interesting to make a comparison to these 2 removal spells to the ones from the prior set. So do we like Impale or Contract Killing better?
I like Impale more, I think.
I do, too. That 4 mana is such a big step. Now, what about Moment of Craving or Vanquish the Weak?
I like a Moment of Craving more.
I do, too. I like both of these better. They're cheaper, right? You take off a mana from each of them, and that's a huge, they're a little less flexible, like in the case of Moment of Craving, but even then, Moment of Craving can kill things that Vanquish the Weak can't.
Yes, if your 3/3 gets blocked by their 4/4, this card kills that. Vanquish the Weak does nothing.
Right, and it doesn't get blown out by combat tricks in quite the same way. Like, you might still be able to win combat. So interesting stuff. I mean, that's something that's really of note, is that the removal got better. Like, these 2 black common removal spells are better than their counterparts from the prior. So we'll keep that in mind. Moment of Craving, I would say B-. Like, this to me is just, solid removal that you're going to play basically every copy you get of.
Yep, Moment of Craving was great.
Oath-Sworn Vampire, what does this guy do? He's just sort of posing.
So this one...
Oh, he's right out of the coffin. I see what's going on.
1 and a black for a 2/2 uncommon. It's a Vampire Knight. It enters the battlefield tapped. So this is the text I was looking for on Jungle Creeper.
Yeah.
You may cast Oathsworn Vampire from your graveyard if you gain life this turn. So this is another life gain matters card. It looks like there's 1 uncommon in each color or something like that. And it's a little bonus. Like, imagine you play this, they trade off for it. Then on turn 4, you're like, Moment of Craving your 3/2, just recast Oathsworn Vampire.
That's pretty darn good. Now, the enter the battlefield tapped, how big of a downside are we giving that, though? Because blocking matters in sets like these.
Blocking does matter. So it's a real drawback. If you have 2 ways to gain life in your deck, I think this card is okay, you'll play it. If you have 4 ways to gain life, it becomes actively good.
Okay.
So I think Oathsworn Vampire is going to end up being a C+.
It's a C+, right?
I think you're going to end up with a bunch of ways to gain life just kind of by accident. You don't even have to try very hard.
Yeah. I like it. I think that's a good card. This is the type of design that I think is really interesting, too, because there's a lot going on there about gaining life, when you can get it back, the fact that it's tapped, that kind of stuff. Pitiless Plunderer is next. Is he biting the gold? Yeah.
Of course he is.
Yeah. 3 and a black for a 1/4 human pirate and uncommon. Well, you better show me something pretty good here, Mr. Plunderer, because a 1/4 for 4s, I'm not in for that. Whenever another creature you control dies, all right, let's stack up the conditions, you get a treasure?
So it's a Mondo combo with the 3/2 that's the Ruthless Knave that lets you sack creatures to make them into treasure.
That's true. So you end up getting 3 treasures and drawing a card?
Or drawing a card.
Yeah, or drawing a card.
This card just seems okay. It doesn't seem great.
It seems kind of bad.
It kind of helps you get the City's Blessing in that you're keeping parity in terms of how many permanents you have even when you're losing permanents, but I still don't see this being...
Shouldn't be a better blocker, though? A 1/4 for 4?
1/4s are good blockers.
For 4? Couldn't even have made it a 2/4?
Well, then it would be good. I think Pitiless Plunder is probably going to end up being a C-.
I'm going to go D.
D?
I think it's bad.
Yeah, you're really not going to play this card, are you? All right, fine. We'll give a D to Pitiless Plunderer. There will be some games where it'll perform, though.
I'm going to call it Pitiful Plunderer.
Oh, sick burn.
The big boys here. This is the one.
The Ravenous Chupacabra.
You made fun of me on Twitter for saying that this is likely the mythic uncommon of this set. It has to be, right?
The joke was it's so obvious that it is.
Okay, good. At least I wasn't wrong. Why don't you read it for us? It's
awesome. 2 black for a 2/2 Beast Horde uncommon, and when it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls.
Boom. We don't care that it's 4, a little hard to cast, only a 2/2, and not an irrelevant creature type. You're getting 4 mana. I mean, compare this to the removal spell, right? It's Impale, except for you get a 2/2.
Yeah, which also opens the door for bounce spells being removal spells, for Raise Deads being removal spells. Honestly, I think Ravenous Chupacabra is an A.
It might just be an A, right?
It's a tempo positive card advantage play that kills anything they can do.
What are they
Doesn't
thinking?
really get much better. Yeah, I don't understand why this card exists, but it does. This is the world we live in, and it's time for the Chupacabras to shine finally.
Yeah, it is. Now, one thing I will say that I like about this design is that this is a more defensive, broken card rather than charging Monster Soar, which was just like, I can't even play against this. Yes, you're going to feel really bad when people Ravenous Chupacabra you, but you know what it feels a lot like? Impale. Right? A common. Like, it feels like, okay, you killed my creature and you got some value out of it. And if they recur it, sure, they go nuts. But nothing felt like Monster Soar, right? Like, if that's your best uncommon or that's your mythic uncommon, it doesn't make for great play experience. I think the Ravenous Chupacabra still leaves that door open.
Well, I think you still lose the game to the Chupacabra. You just don't. It's just not as in your face.
I don't know. I don't actually think that's true. I mean, I think that you're behind, but like, it is still just a random 2/2. Like, it's not a... this isn't a 4/4 that it leaves back or whatever. Anyway, I like.
I'm going to disagree. I think we're going to be pretty sick of this card. This is like kind of the GOAT uncommon and one of the better rares too.
It's not a GOAT. It's a Chupacabra.
No, the greatest of all time.
We gave it an A. The next is Reaver Ambush. It's 2 and a black for an instant. It's uncommon and it says exile target creature with power 3 or less.
So it's Vanquish the Weak, but exile.
Hell? It's the same card. Like.
Yeah, I mean this card's a B-. Sure.
Sure, but like can I just take a minute here to go this is a little uninspired, right?
I'm not arguing with you.
Okay. I needed to let that off my chest. B- for Reaver Ambush?
Yeah, I will give B-. It's just
still
a good
instant
removal spell.
speed
It's an instant speed removal spell. It will hit most of the things. And it exiles, so it can go ahead and get their vampire that comes back or whatever.
Can kill their raptor companion. Recover. This is a reprint. 2 and a black for a sorcery. It's common and it says return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand and you draw a card.
This is what I want with my Ravenous Chupacabras.
Oh, yeah. So tell us how... So this is a card... Like, where else was this printed? I can't remember. Modern Masters 2017.
Tell us how good this is. I thought that was both our jobs.
Well, I'm curious because this looks to me like the type of card that I think, oh, yeah, I'd like that. I'd like to play that. And then it never makes the cut. It's one of those type of cards. Is that the case with Recover? Like, do I need a reason to play it or does it just make my deck no matter what?
It's in the middle of those two things. Where I think you can just play this card and it's going to be okay. Like, because look, the format's fast. We don't know exactly how fast this one's going to be, but even in fast formats, card advantage does matter, right? It's not like everyone always has perfect curves and the game always ends on turn 5. And
of course not.
Recover is a good way to get card advantage. If you have 3 or 4 good creatures or one insane creature like a Chupacabra, then Recover becomes pretty good.
Okay.
You're not going to want to play like multiples very often. It is slow. Like this is a black divination, right? This is a 3-mana draw too.
Exactly.
And you just can't sit around doing that much, doing that too often. But I think a Recover every now and then is not going to hurt you. So
are you more likely to play it with bomb, super high level cards or cheap cards?
Well,
one drop,
ideally,
2 drops.
Ideally they're cheap. Ideally they're both, right? That's why like Hostage Taker or Chupacabra are the perfect cards to play with this.
Yeah.
But if you have, like an Air Elemental in your deck, and you have also like one of the rare dragons that costs 6 or something, then this card becomes a little more appealing because you have good creatures to bring back, even if they're expensive.
Yeah, I mean, one of the lines you see a lot is like turn 5, play Recover, get my 2-drop, play it.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
I think that Recover is going to end up being like, in terms of how high you should pick it, you shouldn't pick it very high. Okay. If you don't end up with one, it doesn't matter. And if you do, you want to always play it. But it will be good when you cast it a lot of the time. So this looks to me like a C-.
Yeah, I have it at D, which is to me like again a card that you might just not play a lot, but when you do, okay, and you'll know. You want it in with Ravenous Chupacabra and that type of card. Sadistic Sky Marcher. This is 2 and a black for a 2/2 vampire soldier with flying and lifelink, and it's an uncommon. It says, as an additional cost to cast it, reveal a vampire card from your hand or pay 1.
This card looks really good to me.
It's fantastic.
In a vampire deck, a 3-mana 2/2 flying lifelink is awesome. And if you don't have vampires in your hand, you probably can just cast this for 4 mana and not worry about it.
I feel like that too. I do.
You're not going to run into a spot very often where you can't cast this and have no vampires.
No, and these are just really hard to race, evasive lifelinker, and of course, absolutely fantastic for, throwing an equipment on or, whatever. Any way to augment its power is fantastic. I like Sadistic Sky Marcher a lot. I'm going to go B.
I like B for Sadistic Sky Marcher. This card looks really good.
Yeah. Vampire Revenant is 3 and a black for a 3/1 flying vampire spirit at common. How worried are we about the 1 toughness? Because I'll tell you what, the 3 power and flying on a 4-drop at common, I'm in for that. But the 1 toughness, is that worrisome?
The 3 power is very good, but the 1 toughness is very bad.
Is it?
I actually think that...
No, I mean it. Like, because remember, it's flying. Like, it has to run into like a random token
I think
that
the 1
has
toughness
flying.
is a drawback here. You have cards like Fanatical Firebrand, the Goblin Pirate that can shoot for 1.
Okay, yeah.
You get kind of embarrassed by cards like that. Red also has Forerunner of the Empire that pings everything for 1, for example.
Yeah,
because of Enrage
guy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because of Enrage, there's a decent amount of 1 damage ping effects floating around.
Okay, so the 1 toughness actually is relevant because in combat it feels very much not.
This is because it was flying. It's not going to get into combat very often.
Right, like it's going to trade for a 2/2 flyer anyway.
Yeah, but that's not the worst.
Right, and that doesn't matter anyway. And so and this isn't a set that puts out a lot of 1/1 flying tokens or whatever. They're usually down on the ground. But still, your point is taken. It still is a real drawback for the Vampire Revenant. That said, it's still 3-powered flyer for 4 mana. They got to kill it.
Yeah, this card seems like a C- to me.
Yeah, I think so
you'll
too.
Put it in your vampire decks, and this is a card that don't be afraid to aggressively side it out. If you see that your opponent has multiple ping effects, just take this card out. And your deck will get better.
Voracious Vampires are our last black card. It is 2 and a black for a Vampire Knight. It's common. It has Menace, and it's a 2/2. So 3 mana, 2/2 Menace. When it enters the battlefield, target vampire you control gets +1/+1 and gains Menace until end of turn. Huh.
Yeah, this card seems good.
It's a lot of upside for a little 3-drop there.
3 mana, 2/2 Menace, and you're likely getting in, a successful hit in the turn you play it with something else. So I think Voracious Vampire is I think it's a C+.
Definitely a C+.
I'll go C+.
It may even be a little better. I mean, this reads more like an uncommon than a common. That's just a lot of value for 3 mana. Menace is a very, very good ability in these aggressive sets too. I like C+ for Voracious Vampire. Hey, look, it looks aggressive.
Yeah, Black
like
does
the
have some good
removal a
removal
lot.
spells
I
and
like the
recover.
removal.
So and Black might be kind of poised to be a more board controlling deck, but I don't think that's how it's actually going to play out.
Right. I like those removal spells. That gives me a glimmer of hope for some type of slower deck available. I don't need them all to be, but I want at least one available. All right, we've got red. Next, our first card is called Bombard. It is 2 and a red for an instant. It's common, and it says it does 4 damage to a creature. So there's your red burn spell at common for the set. That seems very good to me.
It's just 3 mana, kill just about anything.
Most things, yeah, at instant speed.
And at instant speed.
Yeah. I think Bombard is going to be your premium red burn spell here at common. It's probably going to be a B. I mean, this is the type of card that you want, multiple copies of.
This is going to kill creatures that cost 5 mana.
Exactly.
So, yes, I think Bombard is going to be a B.
Yeah, very good card. Next is Brazen Freebooter. This is 3 and a red for a 3/3 human pirate. It's common. When it enters the battlefield, you get a treasure.
Playable,
Finders,
but not
keepers.
exciting.
No,
I
it's
don't
really
think the
not.
red decks care about treasure all that much.
No.
So this looks like a D+.
I think so too. That's the thing, is that these aggressive decks are not as big on treasure. They're not as big on ascend generally. And your 3/3 for 4 isn't great. D+ for Brazen Freebooter. Next is Buccaneers Bravado. This is 1 and a red for an instant. It's common. It says choose 1. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains first strike until end of turn. Or target pirate gets +1/+1 and gains double strike until end of turn.
Wham. This card is sweet.
That's great.
So it's like a miniature sure strike if you're not targeting a pirate. But when you are targeting a pirate, it just goes off.
Right. That's cool. I like that card.
Yeah, I think this card is going to end a lot of games. This is the card that, people are going to wonder how they're going to lose, and they're going to get hit for 8 off of a pirate they didn't expect.
Exactly. Remember, +1/+1 on either of those modes as well. So the double strike, really adding up if you do manage to target a pirate with it. Good combat trick. Seems very solid. I think Sure Strike is probably a reasonable comparison for Buccaneer's Bravado, and that card ended up being quite strong as well.
This is probably going to end up being a C.
C?
I think it's going to be a C.
Okay.
I think most of the time you're going to spend 2 and trade something, and that's going to be fine. But the fact that you sometimes can hit them for 6 or 8 out of nowhere, makes it interesting. But it's still not a C+.
Okay. C for Buccaneer's Bravado. What about Charging Tuscadon?
This is 3 red. It's a 4/4 dinosaur uncommon. It has trample, and if it would deal combat damage to a player, it deals double that damage instead. So it's a 5 mana 4/4 trample, but every point of damage it hits them is doubled. So if they block with a 2/2, they still take 4. And if they don't block, they take the full 8. So it does a lot of damage. This is the kind of card that if you combine this with a pump spell, now you're talking.
Yeah, trample plus that extra ability does seem like the ability to get in for a heck of a lot of damage. At least like the type of card that forces blocks, right?
It's really hard to imagine your opponent not wanting to block this card.
Right. Like they attack with it and they're just like, I'm going to just throw everything I can in front because it just deals normal combat damage in that scenario. And when they start taking damage, they're taking way too much and it just gets super scary. Like you said, a combat trick or whatever, you could just be dead. This card seems, I like cards that draw that level of attention. I like cards that force the issue.
A good high end for an aggressive deck and a good card in just like a mid-range dinosaurs deck too.
Yeah.
So I think it's just going to be good overall, which looks to me like it's not an insane card, but it's a good 5-drop. It looks like a C+ to me.
Okay, not quite a B-, right? I mean, this doesn't.
No, I mean, I think you're not going to take this over a good 3-mana removal spell, right?
Right, exactly. So, all right. Next is Daring Buccaneer. It's red for a 2/2. Okay, 1 mana 2/2. It's a human pirate at uncommon. As an additional cost to cast it, you have to reveal a pirate card from your hand or pay 2.
This is sweet. This is something that the aggressive pirate decks are really going to want. Red-black or red-blue is going to really look at this and be like, yeah.
Definitely, especially that red-black deck. My goodness. Yeah, I mean, look, this is a type of card that normally I would kind of shrug at, but I've learned my lesson on that. Daring Buccaneer seems strong in a pirate deck. Outside of it, pretty miserable.
Yeah, I think it's a C+ in a pirate deck and unplayable outside.
Agree.
An F outside.
Agree. And, just think back to Comena's Speaker, right? That was a 1 mana 2/2 in a relevant tribe, and it ended up being very strong. This is similar. All right, this is a card you mentioned a few minutes ago, Fanatical Firebrand. What is this little pirate?
I like this. I like this one a lot. This is red for a 1/1 Goblin Pirate at common. It has haste, and you can tap and sack it to deal 1 to target creature or player.
Oh, you have to tap it?
So it's like a Mog Fanatic, but it has haste. It gets in there. Turn 1, attack for 1. It can't attack and use its ability, no. But you can also, block and sack to ping something. It's also just red for a 1/1, or red for a deal 1 at any point you want. Because it has haste, you can use it right away. So this card's sweet. I think I would basically always play this. Maybe you side it out sometimes if they don't have any X1s. But this card just seems very good and efficient on the face of it. I would give it a C.
Yeah, I think that, you look at cards like Vampire Revenant and you start thinking, maybe this Firebrand's a little better than I thought. Also, adds up to finish off, players sometimes, but oftentimes creatures after combat. And you mentioned Raid, you mentioned the haste, it can enable Raid as well. What did you give it?
A C.
Okay, I like C for Fanatical Firebrand. Next is the Red Forerunner of the Empire. This one's a little different because it's a human soldier that searches up dinosaurs. 3 and a red for a 1/3. You can go get a dinosaur and put on top of your library. And then whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you can have Forerunner of the Empire deal 1 damage to each creature.
I like it because not only does it threaten all your opponent's X1s, it also triggers all your enrages. Like tutoring up an enraged dino with this is just a really sweet combo.
That really is. And there's some nice ones too.
Definitely. This is not the most efficient creature at a 4 mana 1/3, but I think this card's going to be good. It looks like a C+ to me.
Yeah, especially just given that you're going to be able to search up specific types of dinosaurs for specific types of scenarios and enrage on top of it.
You're also going to bump this up in grades if you get really good dinos, kind of like with all the Forerunners.
That's right. Or if you're playing against vampires. So C+ for Forerunner of the Empire. Frilled Death Spitter is 2 and a red for a 3/2. Dinosaur at common, and it's got Enrage. It deals 2 damage to target opponent.
I like this card. This card is a beating. If you play this in an aggressive deck, first of all, it can get the last 2 points through a lot of the time, right? Because you attack them, they either block and take 2 or they don't and take 3. Second, if you just play this and trade for their 3-drop and they take 2, that's an advantage to you. So I think Frilled Death Spitter is real good.
Yeah, this is Ravenous Daggertooth on, no coffee. C+?
I would still give it a C. I don't think this card.
Solid,
I don't think this card is like outrageously
I agree.
good, but
Totally.
I think that it is good.
I agree. Next is Goblin Trailblazer. This is 1 and a red for a 2/1 with Menace. It's common. It's a pirate too. This is the type of card that I see and I go, well, put on your seatbelt, kiddos, because we got an aggressive format. No blocking allowed.
2 mana 2/1 with a relevant evasion ability is great because you play this, it's going to get in for damage for a few turns. Eventually this gets bricked when they have multiple creatures in play. But at that point it already did 4 to 6 damage, and if you have a removal spell or a good curve, you can just push them off because it's so hard to block menace creatures when you're attacking with multiple other things as well.
Yeah, and they come down so early and start piling on damage when they're only 2 mana.
Yeah,
so we have a 2 mana 2/1 flyer effectively and a 2 mana 2/1 menace now. Bunch of 1-drops. Yeah, this is going to be a fast one, it sounds like. I like this card a lot. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the top tier red commons, kind of after the removal spells.
I think this is lower than the removal spells, but I'm looking at a C+ for Goblin Trailblazer. I think you're just never going to be unhappy with this in an aggressive deck, and you're not going to feel like you ever have too many of them.
That's what I think too. It's a really good card. Next is called Mutiny. It's red for a sorcery, a common. It says, target creature an opponent controls deals damage equal to its power to another target creature that player controls.
I like this card.
What the heck? They fight each other?
Well, one fights the other. So it's a mutiny where they're pirates, right? So
yeah, okay.
So you're challenging the captain. Though in this case, you're not actually challenging the most powerful. It's their most powerful creature fights their second most powerful creature. Is usually what's going to happen.
So the mutiny is traditionally unsuccessful. Yeah. But you're kind of pulling the strings from your side. This is an interesting card. Like, how conditional is this? How often would you say you draw mutiny and you get to kill something?
I think that you're almost always going to be able to kill something. You won't always have your first choice of what to kill, but you'll always be able to kill something. I'm kind of interested in that. I normally don't like these like super conditional, but 1 mana, like. Look at it this way. They play a 2/2 on turn 2. You play your 2/2. Next turn they attack and play a 3/3. You can then play a 2-drop and use their 3/3 to kill their 2/2. And, what if they played a 3/2?
For 1 mana?
Yeah.
That's good.
And what if they played a 3/2 instead of a 3/3 on turn 3? Then all of a sudden you're killing their 3-drop. And that's really exciting.
This is kind of cool. And also kind of a mean card to play, right? Like, so what's the fail case? What's the downside? They have 1 creature? That's the problem?
It doesn't do anything if they have 1 creature, and it doesn't do anything if they have 1 really good creature and a bunch of sucky creatures. Like
ones you just don't really care about?
Right. And, you being unable to kill their medium creatures is kind of a drawback.
If you were a really good pirate, you would be able to get them to fight each other, right?
Yeah, that's a slightly different card, but yes. that was
a much better card.
That was 4 red, 2 creatures fight each other from Eldritch Moon.
I remember that. Yeah, a little too expensive. But here, Mutiny, a much more tame version. But at 1 red mana, I like that. I think I'm going to play this card.
Yes, you're always going to play Mutiny. I don't think it's as good as Bombard, or the other good tier 1 removal, but it's got to be just a step below. It looks like a C+ to me.
I think so too. This is a type of removal that I call the kinds where you're just happy to get something with it. Like, you bring in you main deck Allegiance Judgment, right? You're like, oh, thank God they cast something that I can actually cast it on, and you get to get your value. Mutiny, you're not going to be super picky as long as you get a card worth of value out of it, and there's going to be times where you get a good card out of it, and that's. For 1 mana, that is just unheard of in modern day limited. So C+ for Mutiny, cool card. Needletooth Raptor, what does this thing do? Ooh, Rainbow Raptor.
It's 3 and a red for a 2/2 dinosaur uncommon. It has Enrage. Whenever Needletooth Raptor is dealt damage, it deals 5 damage to target creature an opponent controls.
Dang! Wow, that's a lot.
That is a lot of damage.
Wow, so, is this like a build around?
Yes, this is one of the first Enrage cards where it's both cheap enough itself and the Enrage is good enough that you can actually make a deck built around triggering this. Like if you can consistently deal 1 to this, it just takes out all their creatures. Also by itself, it's a 4-mana 2/2 that basically just trades for anything.
Right. They block, it dies, you get to do 5. This card seems really sweet. It effectively has Death Touch in that way. Yeah. Or maybe even trades for 2 things. Wow. I'm actually really impressed by Needletooth Raptor.
Yeah, this card is good.
This makes me want to build an Enrage, deck. Like actually put in cards like if Ryle was in this set, it might be. But if it was in this set, that's the type of card I'd actually play quite happily if I had a Needletooth Raptor. Neat.
Yeah, I think this card, it's not the best aggressive card because
absolutely not.
It's a 4-mana 2/2 and you don't care about blocking, and if you attack, your opponent's just going to take 2. But in a ramp or control deck or mid-range deck, it looks pretty solid, especially if you have a couple little combos. Like, imagine going turn 4 into the Empire, turn 5 Needletooth Raptor, it pings itself and kills one of their guys. That's gross, right?
That's great, yeah.
And then every vampire you play, dinosaur you play afterwards kills another one of their creatures.
Yeah.
So
and big ones too. That's 5 damage.
This looks like a B- to
I'm
me.
B- on Needletooth Raptor. I just think that you play it and your opponent can't attack you in many, many cases. Like, imagine they have a 4/4 and a 2/2, right? They're just like, well, no attacks, and that's a pretty good thing. And you can even attack with it probably in some scenarios too. So B- for Needletooth Raptor. What about Erasca Raptor?
Not as exciting. 2 red, 3/4 dinosaur at common. That is all.
Even me who likes 3/4s quite a bit, I'm not excited by Erasca Raptor. I mean, we saw at common in green, a version with reach. This one doesn't have anything of the sort. Pretty boring. Filler. This is probably a D plus maybe.
Well, I think the stats are good enough that it's going to be like a C-.
Yeah,
it's a dinosaur. You might care about the dinosaur card type.
Okay, that's true. You could search it up. No, you're not doing that. Yeah, okay, sure, C-. I mean, I like 3/4s, so I'm not going to argue too hard on it. What about Pirate's Pillage?
This card's really sweet. This is 3 in a red for a sorcery uncommon. As an additional cost to cast Pirate's Pillage, discard a card.
Okay.
What it does is draw 2 cards and make 2 treasure.
Oh.
So you essentially traded 2 cards for 2 cards, right? You paid 4 mana and you discarded, but you get back 2 treasure and you get 2 cards. So it's kind of like a Tormenting Voice, except you paid 2 mana to get 2 treasure.
Yeah.
Which is worse if you spend it right away, but if you're trying to ramp to a 7-drop on turn 5, it's a little better.
Yeah, I think for limited, this might actually just be better where it's not as often that you need
certainly
to
worse in
voice right
constructed,
away. Yeah, way worse in constructed. But interesting, the fixing aspect of it too, and the fact that you actually are gaining permanence. We do have Ascend in this format, and this is a way to turn a card in your hand into 2 permanents on the battlefield and still, maintain parity as far as cards in hand goes. Interesting stuff. Is this like, are you way more likely to play this with splash cards? The funny part is that I think of rummaging as a decent way to mitigate my splashes because I can discard the cards that I can't cast, but I guess Pirate's Pillage enables you to cast all of them, so that kind of goes away.
This looks like a neat card. I suspect we're not going to get to play this as much as we want, but in the decks that want it, it does all the things that are good, right? It helps you filter through cards. It puts permanence into play. It fixes your colors. So it looks like it's a C- in the terms of you're not going to get to play it all that often. But in the decks that are trying to get the City's Blessing or splash cards, it is going to be effective and move up a little bit in rating.
Right. And especially, one of the things that we talk about for cards like this is it doesn't affect the board, which it still really doesn't even with the 2 treasure. But you might find a 2-drop that you want to cast with it and, keep yourself alive. C- for Pirate's Pillage?
I think C- for Pirate's Pillage.
Yeah, it's like right on that border.
It's almost like a build-around where you're just not going to play it in aggro decks, and it's going to be like closer to a C in the non-aggro decks. Yeah. But aggro is the bulk of the format from what it looks like.
Yeah. Okay. What about Reckless Rage?
It says red for an instant. It's an uncommon. Deals 4 damage to target creature you don't control, and 2 damage to target creature you do control. So you can't cast this because it has 2 targets on it unless you have a creature. Man, so you don't get to get away with that.
Yeah.
It can trigger Enrage, but dealing 2 is, a little bit.
You may be overdoing it a little.
Yeah.
Kill your creature.
If you just have a 3 toughness creature out, this is a very good removal spell. So this card's kind of weird. If your deck is all aggressive 2 toughness creatures, then I don't think this card is particularly great. But if you have a lot of creatures that live through this card becomes very effective.
Yeah, absolutely. A red instant that does 4, even if you have to kind of take a hit to do it. Even if you have to lose a creature, it might be worth it in some cases. But one of the things, of course, that you do lose is how cheap Reckless Rage actually is, right? I mean, it's still it's 1 red mana, but like you basically are never doing this on turn 1 or 2.
So it's also kind of cool that if you just have 1 mana up and they point a removal spell at one of your creatures, you can just use this to
that's cool. Yeah.
Kill your own creature, kill their creature.
Yeah. I can't tell. That is a major drawback, right? I mean, 2 damage to your creature is a big deal. It'll often kill one of your creatures.
Yeah, I think that the drawback is very real.
So how high do we want to go on Reckless Rage then? Because I'll tell you what, instant speed, 1 red mana, 4 damage to a creature is something I'm real interested in.
I think that Reckless Rage is probably like... My guess is it's going to end up playing like a B minus.
Okay.
I just think that it's cheap enough
that
you
can
just
so powerful that you can't.
That you can just keep the mana up and kill off one of their creatures and kill one of your creatures that was going to die anyway.
Okay. Sea Red is, I guess it's like Sea Legs. It's 1 and a red for an aura at uncommon. Enchanted creature gets +2/+1 and has first strike. That's impressive. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't attack with a creature this turn, you have to sacrifice Sea Red.
So, +2/+1 and first strike is a beating. I'm glad this card's uncommon.
Huge deal, yeah.
I think this card is going to be very good. I think
you're just
gonna put it on your 2-drop, and you're gonna have a 4/3 at first striker, and your opponent's just not gonna be able to do anything about it.
Yeah, and it's gonna get in for a ton of damage, and then maybe at one point you'll have to pump the brakes, but like. I don't know. +2/+1 in first strike for only 2 mana basically means the creature's unblockable or must be chumped for a while. Even if it's just a 2/2 you're putting in.
Yeah, the second clause is of having to attack every turn. Not a difficult one to fulfill.
Not at all. You're going to be doing it anyway. I do like, though, that they made it so that you can't just play Sea Red and just be like, now I have a super blocker for the rest of the game. That line does not work. And I think that's cool. It encourages it to be more aggressive and a little bit more narrow. And I think that's what you want to do with cards like this. Wow, that is powerful stuff. Cheap, early, effective, does exactly what you want in these type of decks. I think, Christian Calcano probably is, gathering a collection of Sea Red right now. I don't know how to grade it. I mean, I don't think it's in the B range. I'd give it a C+. No. I mean, I think it's really powerful.
I think it's a C+.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to end games, but it's also, you are going to draw it and get your creature bounced. It has drawbacks. Like, don't let us sit here and you don't think that we're sitting here saying auras no longer have drawbacks. But some games you'll just run away with the game and your opponent won't be able to do much about it.
Yeah.
So I think C+ for Sea Red.
What about Shake the Foundations?
This is 2 and a red. It's an instant at uncommon. It deals 1 damage to each creature without flying, and you draw a card. So, pings everything for 1, triggers your enrages, kills all their, vampire tokens, doesn't touch flyers, and you draw a card.
What do you make of the fact that this is an uncommon?
Yeah, that's a little weird, right? Mm-hmm. It looks like a card that could certainly be common. Mm-hmm. It being uncommon, I mean, sometimes it could just be numbers, like the numbers have to be there.
Yep.
But
interesting, though, just a side note. So, in the Enrage deck, this seems awesome, but truth is, we've never really seen an Enrage deck, at least not yet.
No, we have seen in Rivals here, as we're talking about these cards, some Enrage cards that make us think, Enrage might actually be good.
Yeah,
but
Needletooth Raptors got me interested, that's for sure.
Yeah, for the most part, this card looks like something that you want to use to sweep your opponent's creatures away.
Yeah, so this is the ultra rare sideboard build-around card. It has both. You either be Enrage and build around, or you're going to want to kill vampires with it.
Yeah, you either Enrage, in the main deck, or you live long enough to see yourself become a sideboard card.
Wow. We may need to stop the review on that note. Luis broke it. Giving this a grade, obviously in the Enrage deck, it's probably fantastic, but we have to yet see if that actually exists. And when you bring this in against a bunch of vampires or low toughness, 1 toughness creatures, you're going to be really happy. I mean, you draw a card and kill 2 of their things at instant speed. It can be a real blowout. So it's probably like build around B and sideboard B, something like that.
Yeah, but essentially, you should not take this card over any like C pluses or Cs you need for your deck.
Right.
But this card can't overperform when the conditions are met.
Exactly. Wow, this artwork on Shatter, that is sweet.
That artwork is not going to trick me into putting it in my main deck.
No, that's true.
Shatter's 1 in a red instant, an alpha reprint.
Indeed.
Which you'll find out when I do the alpha podcast I've been threatening to do, and it says destroy target artifact. Yeah. It's a sideboard card,
but it's sideboard.
Not even a particularly good one.
No,
like a sideboard like D, because it's so conditional. Like destroy target artifact or enchantment frequently has multiple targets. Shatter's gonna have fewer targets. It's just straight up destroy an artifact, but if they have a couple, sometimes you bring it in.
That's right. Stampeding Horncrest is next. It's 4 in a red for a 4/4 dinosaur at common. It has haste as long as you control another dinosaur. So let's just break this down into 2 cards. 4/4 dinosaur for 5 mana. Where are we at on that? Be a C- or something?
Yeah, that's like a C-. You'll play it if you need a dino.
And if I gave it haste, like if it just always had haste?
Then it would be good. Then it'd be like a C+ probably.
I think so too. So in the right deck, this thing could be a C+.
This is closer to the second one, the haste one, than the first one, because it's just not that hard to have a dino in play when you hit 5 mana.
No, it's really not.
So, but I think this is going to end up being a C, Stampeding Horncrest.
All right, well, let's split the difference. Stormfleet Swashbuckler is 1 in a red for a 2/2 human pirate at uncommon. And it's got Ascend. It has double strike if you have the city's blessing. So this starts off as a very vanilla, 2/2 for 2 that's a pirate, which is something that you do play. These end up making the deck a lot of the time just to fill out your curve. But if you do find yourself somehow in the later part of the game, or you've got a bunch of treasure and you hit Ascend, it becomes a 2/2 with double strike, which is
still mediocre at that point in the game.
It's like really not that devastating at all.
Still probably a C just because it's a 2 mana 2/2 pirate. But wow, am I not really excited by this card?
I know. This is another one that I mentioned before. I'm looking at how these Ascend cards scale with the game, and this one's actually just better on the first half, just as a 2/2 for 2, which is pretty unexciting. So,
yep.
All right.
So a C for Stormfleet Swashbuckler.
Yeah. What about Sun-Collared Raptor?
This is 1 in a red for a 1/2 dino at common. Has Trample.
1 power Trampler.
1/2 Trampler. You can pay 2 in a red to give it +3/+0 this turn. So
okay. So 4/2 Trample for 3. Okay.
I don't like this card all that much, but because it has Trample, if you can double activate on 6 mana, that's a pretty big card.
That's huge. 7/2 Trample?
Yeah, that's a lot of damage. Mm-hmm. I think this card is playable. I think that aggressive decks, especially ones that can make use of a 1/2 dino, are going to like having this on turn 6 or 7. It doesn't seem like it's going to have a home all the time, though. Like, this is not a card I would be willing to take early. This is a card I'm looking to wheel and maybe put in my red-white dino deck.
Yeah. What about playing it on turn 2 and then playing a land and just attacking it into like a 2/2?
That's a good way to lose a game.
Like, you're going to spend your mana,
I'm always blocking my opponent's Sun-Collared Raptor there.
Right. They take a couple of damage and lose their card, but you time walked yourself, right?
Yeah. So this ends up working fairly poorly for you.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of strangely a later game card. Just you want to be able to pump it a couple times,
which is kind of the weakness of the card. The idea is 2-drop creatures that are good and later are good. Good early and good late are valuable. This is a 2-drop creature that's good late, not really that good early.
Interesting. Yeah, kind of weird. It does, of course, require fulfilling the requirements for controlling a dinosaur, that kind of stuff. So you do have that going for you. I wonder if people will be searching this up with Forerunner of the Empire in the extreme late game. Just like play it, go, and next turn I'm going to activate it 3 times.
Attack for 10.
Yeah. Also works well in the late game or even in the mid game with first strike combat tricks. If you can pay like 4 mana or 5 mana, you can give it +3/+0 and then first strike, and it has Trample as well. It can do a lot of damage. I kind of like it, but I'm not in love. I assume it's going to be a C or a C- somewhere in that range.
I think it's a C-. I think Sun-Collared Raptor is not a spectacular card.
No.
But it is dangerous. It does have its moments.
Yep. Swaggering Corsair is 2 in a red for a 2/2 human pirate at common. Raid. Swaggering Corsair enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if you attack with a creature this turn. So 2/2 for 3 or 3/3 for 3 with Raid. Pretty straightforward card. Seems fine.
This card seems good. If you can curve into this, then you've done a pretty good job of pressuring your opponent.
Definitely.
I'm not giving it above a C. I think it's
I'm not
just
either. I'm giving it a C.
replacement level.
Yeah.
But Swaggering Corsair is good.
Last red card is called Tillinolly's Crown. It is 1 and a red for an aura. It's common. It says enchant creature. God, these auras are just everywhere. When it enters the battlefield, it does 1 damage to the enchanted creature. So, I mean, it obviously makes me think of Enrage, but it also means that you can't put it on just anything. It has to be at least 2 toughness. Enchanted creature gets +3/+0 and has trample.
This card is a lot of damage. It doesn't give you any toughness or real evasion. So you need a lot of 2/2 first strike type creatures to make this good.
Yes.
Or maybe
big
putting
things.
it on like a 4/4.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't seem very good to me though. This isn't an aura that takes you a bad creature and turns it into a good one. No. This is an aura that takes a good creature and turns it into a better one. That's a lot less valuable.
Right. That is so much worse. And it doesn't change blocks. That's the main thing, right? Like if I have a 4/4 and I'm going to attack you with it, you have some number of blocks, that's fine. If I have a 7/4 with trample, yes, it's a little scarier. I might take some damage, but my blocks aren't different. I still just block and kill your creature. So where, compare that to the uncommon C red, completely different blocks available, on a +2/+1 in first strike. Also, what the hell? Like they gave C red +1 on toughness for no discernible reason, and Tillinolly's Crown just gets 0. Come on, I guess that's
it gets -1 if you think about it.
Which one does?
This is -1 toughness.
Oh, sure, yeah, of course, because it hits it. Now, I did mention Enrage that could be a thing as well. But yeah, Tillinolly's Crown's very unexciting as far as that goes. It's probably a D+. It's like a card that you won't play every time, but sometimes, in the right scenario, you will.
I think Tillinolly's Crown is a D, and it's the first card I have on my list of cards I'm going to lose to and also will be bad in my deck.
Yes, all right. Green, last major color, and then I think there's a few, there's actually very few lands and artifacts, so we're actually almost done. Green, our first green card is called Aggressive Urge. It's 1 and a green for an instant at common, and it says target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So not great. Remember we were talking about 1 mana +2/+2 is kind of the sweet spot? Well, we're going wrong direction on both here, but you draw a card.
Yep, that is the rest of the text is draw a card.
Yeah, so does that make up for ultimately a pretty low impact card here, right? 2 mana +1/+1 is really not that much, but you're getting the card back. So if it's, I'm not going to say this, but air quote, if it's free, is it worth it?
This card's good.
Okay.
I think you're going to win a lot of combats, and the fact that it draws a card does make a really big difference. It means that you have invested so much less into this combat. Like normally when you have a combat trick, if you give your 2/2 +2/+2 and trade for a 4/4, you're pretty unhappy about that. Right?
Oh, yeah.
But if you use this and give your 2/2 +1/+1 and trade for a 3/3, it's still a 1-for-1.
And and you're drawing your card. Yeah.
Well, it's a 2-for-1 and it's in their favor, but you draw a card.
Right.
So it ends up being a 1-for-1, and I think that is good. I
do too.
You are fine with that exchange, and if you can snap off their 4-drop with your 4-drop and use Aggressive Urge and keep yours alive, you're just in really good shape at that point.
So solid playable combat trick, give it a C?
I actually might give this a C+. I think you're going to be happy with 1 or 2 Aggressive Urges in all your decks. Yeah,
of course, these ones are the best when you are getting into combat with other creatures rather than players, but that's usually the case.
If you attack me with 2 mana up, and Aggressive Urge would win you the combat, I'm just never blocking. So I'll let everyone know that.
All right, well, there's respect right there. What about Cacophodon?
It makes a cacophony, presumably.
I see.
4 mana, 3 and a green for a 2/5 uncommon dinosaur, and it has Enrage, untap target permanent.
Oh my god. I was so stoked on 2/5 for 4. The Enrage is untap a permanent?
Yeah, it's really
What does that
weird.
even mean? So you block?
You can attack with it, and then it has Vigilance, kind of, or you untap something else.
If they block?
If they block, and then
but they're just gonna
you can cast a spell pre-combat, attack, untap one of your lands, cast something else.
But they have to block.
Yeah.
Okay, I like a 2/5 for 4. If there is going to be a big stuff dinosaurs deck, right? We've hinted at that as a possibility. I want blockers like this. This is a very high toughness and enough power to kill a lot of attackers' blocker. But the Enrage is like a throwaway, right?
it doesn't really do a whole lot. So I think this is a C because the stats are good.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a weird card.
Yeah, kind of a weird one. Cacophedon. I like the name. Cherished Hatchling is next. This is a funny one. It's 1 and a green for a 2/1 dinosaur at uncommon. And when it dies, you may cast dinosaur spells this turn as though they had flash. And whenever you cast a dinosaur spell this turn, it gains when this creature enters the battlefield, you may have it fight another target creature. Now, you like flavor. Now, that's a flavor win right there.
This is a flavorful card. Basically, when this dies, the other dinos show up and they're ready to fight.
They're ready to go. It's like all the angry mom dinos go, where's my my baby dinosaur?
I've got bad news for you. This is a good card.
Yeah.
It's a hard card for your opponent to attack into if you leave mana up. Because it requires mana to use the ability, if you tap out, they'll attack into it and not worry about it. But if you have like 5 or 6 mana up, it's pretty bad to attack into this because then you just play a 4/4 dino and turn and eat their 3/3. If you attack with this, it's going to be unblockable a lot of the times. Because you're going to attack with this on turn 6, and they're like, well, if I block and kill their thing, then they play a 6/6 trample and just destroy me.
Mm-hmm.
So
conditional though. I mean, it is still a 2/1 dinosaur for 2, so it's not a disaster in any case, right?
It's a 2/1 dino for 2 that gives your opponent some awkward attacking and blocking decisions. Mm-hmm. And if you have a way to kill it off, you can get some value. Like you rile to kill this, right? You're down a card, but then you just get to play a big dino and fight and kill their best creature. It's like you traded your 2/1 for their best creature.
Okay, yeah. And there's a lot of enraged stuff that we saw that can ping and kill a cherished hatchling, perhaps on your own terms. Just don't tell the dinosaurs that you did that. So I don't know, dude. This card is to me one of the most difficult to grade without playing it first, because it's like, how often does this actually happen? Am I going to go this whole format without ever actually getting to get the fight ability off of this? Am I just going to find out that I'm always tapped out when it dies? Do people just ignore it, take the 2 damage until they have mana up or whatever? I don't know. I don't know the answers to these things. Do you have a sense for how good Cherished Hatchling is?
I think it's just okay. It feels like it's going to be hard to actually get the whole ability to go off. Because remember, you also have to have a dino in your hand.
Have the mana up. It has to be bigger. Like, I'm a pessimist, and I just think like that's never happening ever.
So I think this card is more cute than it is good. It is playable, and your opponent doesn't have the information you do, so you can get away with a lot, right? You can attack with this and get damage through sometimes when you just have no dinos in hand.
Yeah, it does seem like it could lead to some blowouts. So
yeah.
Still, I don't know, man. I'm going to give it a D. And my reasoning is, I don't know. Like, I feels like it's going to be really hard to get everything set up. And I don't think I want a 2/1 for 2 that often. That part would change it for me if it was like, no, you just play it because it's fine as a 2/1 for 2 and you need a 2-drop or whatever. I don't know. What do you want to give it?
I would say it's like a C-.
Okay. So, an okay card.
Yeah.
Okay.
Certainly playable.
What did we give Colossal Dreadmaw?
Last time, I don't know, but
because it's back like again. Yeah.
This is a 4 green for a 6/6 dino at common with trample. It's a C. It's big enough. It has trample, so you actually don't mind playing this as a good 6-drop. Like, it's a good common 6-drop, but you don't really need more than 1 or 2 of these in your deck almost ever, and some decks don't want any. So
I really like this card as a big common finisher. I don't know why it's here again.
Yeah.
Crested Herd Collar, we'll give it a C. Crested Herd Collar is next. It's 3 green for a 3/3 dinosaur with trample. It's uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, you get a 3/3 green dinosaur token creature with trample. So you get 2 3/3 tramplers for 5 mana.
It's like a Regisaur Alpha, but slightly smaller.
Yeah, and uncommon. I like it, though. That's great. 6 power. Like, compare that to Colossal Dreadmaw, right? I think all told, I'd rather have the Colossal Dreadmaw, but you're giving me a whole mana off, and I'm still getting 6 power and 6 toughness and trample.
Yeah, which makes this quite good.
Yeah.
It's resilient to removal. This is also good with effects that let you get creatures back from your graveyard.
Yeah, it's better blocker than Dreadmaw in most scenarios. It's a worse attacker, but still, it's 5 mana. It's a whole mana cheaper. It's awesome.
So I think that I'm going to end up giving this a B. This card looks really good.
I am too. Yeah, I think this card's awesome. What does Enter the Unknown do?
It says green. It's a sorcery. It's uncommon. Target creature you control explores.
Okay.
And you may play an additional land this turn.
Okay. So you target your creature, and then it's the one that would get the +1/+1 counter if you don't see a land, etc. Okay. How big of a deal is playing an additional land this turn?
It's not really. Like, if this card is in your opening hand, you can have some pretty good turns. Like, imagine turn 2 creature, 2/2.
Mm-hmm.
Turn 3, play Enter the Unknown, play 2 lands that turn, play a 3-drop. And then next turn you get to play a 5-drop on turn 4.
Okay.
Like, that's kind of cool.
That's kind of cool, but you need to have all those land. Like, you're not digging them out of your library, right? So you just have to have them.
Basically, Enter the Unknown is going to either replace itself with a land, 40% of the time, or a +1/+1 counter and like a scry. The other 60%. Is that worth a card?
No.
Because playing an additional land is not worth a ton to me.
No.
So this card doesn't look very good,
No.
all told.
I think that like maybe if you have one of these in your deck, you can live with it. But I think the average that I want is like 0.5 of these. So yeah, I think Enter the Unknown looks just, and plus there is some risk. You do have to target your creature. Like, if they kill it or bounce it, like you get none of this.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not liking this card that much.
Enter the Unknown seems like a D to me, though.
Me
It
too.
does have the power for some explosive turns.
Yeah, I do like that it's only 1 mana. Next one is the Forerunner, but for green, Forerunner of the Heralds, which is of course a Merfolk Forerunner. So this one is 3/2 for 3 and a green. So 4 mana, 3/2. But its ability, again, to go search up the Merfolk and put on top of your library. But whenever another Merfolk enters a battlefield under your control, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on this guy, on the Forerunner of the Heralds specifically.
So it's kind of like a 4 mana 4/3, because presumably you're casting a Merfolk the next turn, and then, it can even grow from there.
Yeah.
I like this card a lot.
I do
I think
too.
I think it's quite strong.
Of course, the thing we mentioned before about how good are the Merfolk that you have matters, but I think you're playing it in any Merfolk tribal deck, and you're going to be thrilled with it. Especially because there's some key uncommons that you'll want to be searching up with this type of card. We mentioned Merfolk Mistbinder before, and then if you go back to Ixalan, which there'll still be a pack of for Booster Draft, you may find some stuff there as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I think this is one of the better ones as well. 4/3, and then like you said, gets even bigger. B.
Yeah, I think Forerunner of the Heralds gets a B.
Giltgrove Stalker, which looks a lot like Forerunner of the Heralds. 1 and a green for a 2/1 Merfolk Warrior at common. You like attacking? This one says Giltgrove Stalker can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less.
So it has evasion, but it doesn't last very long.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be able to be blocked on turn 4 or 5 almost every time. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
But it's still a 2 mana 2/1 Merfolk, and it will get by some of the time. It can also entice blocks, right? The fact that it's a 2/1, if they have a 2/2 and a 3/2 out, they can only block with the 3/2. So it is still an advantage.
Yeah. Also, that 2 or less is part of the text box. It has nothing to do with its power. So if you do put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it, it can't be chump blocked or double blocked by small things. And if it's bigger than their stuff, then it can just keep on attacking. Seems like a solid 2-drop to me.
Yeah, I think Giltgrove Stalker is a C.
Yeah, I think so too. Just a solid 2. What about Hardy Veteran?
It says 1 and a green. It's a 2/2 human warrior at common. And it says, as long as it's your turn, Hardy Veteran gets +0/+2. So it's a 2 mana 2/4, but only on attacks. They're really pressing
But only on blocks, yeah.
No, only on attacks.
Only
As
on
long as
attacks.
As long as it's your turn.
Weird. What the? Okay, so they are actually encouraging us to attack still with Hardy Veteran.
Yeah, this card would be really annoying if it was a 2/4 blocker.
Yeah.
As is, it's still a pretty good attacker. It's not tribal, but I'm going to play this card in any green deck that wants to attack and be pretty happy with.
Yeah, I agree. This just seems like another one of those. When you want a 2-drop, this one's fine. Similar to the one that has Vigilance, that kind of thing. It's probably just like a C- though.
Yeah, I think Hardy Veteran gets a C-.
Hunt the Week is back. This is 3 and a green for a sorcery at common. It says put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, then that creature fights target creature you don't control.
Well, this card seems decent.
Card's typically quite strong. It's a big tempo swing, making a creature bigger, killing their thing, and then maybe even getting in a big attack with it.
And there's a +1/+1 counter theme in Merfolk right now.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of Merfolk where this synergizes nicely with. And the +1/+1 counter means they'll be big enough to fight something down, whereas Pounce, we didn't always see that work out in Merfolk.
No, and this is a good card in dinosaurs as well. In fact, it looks like we're getting a dinosaur mouth view here on the card.
Yes, that's the perspective, I believe.
Right. And, with dinosaurs just being naturally bigger than everything else in the environment, Hunt the Weak can enable some really big attacks and is almost always going to be able to kill whatever it is that you want to kill. 4-mana sorcery speed is a problem. The bounce spells are looking better and better, but still, Hunt the Weak ends up being quite good most of the time, and it's like a C+ or a B- depending on how things pan out.
I think this one's going to be, it just feels like a C+ to me, but we'll find out.
Yeah, 4-mana sorcery is still slow. What about Jade Bearer?
This is green for a 1/1 Merfolk Shaman at common. And when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on another target Merfolk you control.
Huh. So you don't want to turn one this that often then, I suppose.
You do not. But it's a 1/1 Merfolk that buffs something for 1, so it's 2/2 worth of stats, but the way it breaks down, the 1/1 here is pretty useless. Like 1-mana 1/1s just don't do that much. So unlike the Glorifier, the vampire that's a 3/3 with the same text, there it's 4/4 worth of stats, but it's a 3/3 in play, which is good. Mm-hmm. So it really is 4/4 worth of stats. This is really only the ++1 counter as being relevant, whereas itself is not going to be super relevant.
Yeah, I'm not super high on this. Even though I've been trying to be a little more open to the different 1-drops, this one doesn't quite make the bar for me.
No, Jade Bearer looks like a D+.
Yeah.
I think that you'll play it in a really aggressive Merfolk deck, but not past that.
I think so too. Jadecraft Artisan is 3 and a green for a 3/3 Merfolk Shaman at common. When it enters the battlefield, a target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
This lets you push through some damage.
Yeah.
The fact that this is a Merfolk doesn't matter as much because it's a little more expensive, and the ability doesn't care about Merfolk. So you can play this in just any aggressive deck.
Yeah, anything that's green. This is fine, right? This is a classic, like a below average but borderline acceptable body, and then a decent, you're getting kind of a combat trick tacked onto it for free.
Yeah, I think this is a C.
Yeah, I do too. Jadecraft Artisan is a C. Jungleborn Pioneer is 2 and a green for a 2/2 Merfolk Scout at common. So another Merfolk, when it enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 blue Merfolk creature token with hexproof. So you're actually getting 3 power and 3 toughness over 2 bodies off of 1 creature.
Yeah, I like this card.
Me too.
I think this card will play pretty well. It also gives you a hexproof token to put some auras on too.
Yeah, it does. And, we haven't seen a lot of Ascend here in green, but that is 2 permanents for 1 card. And that does add up fast. You do that a few times and you will actually get to 10 quite quickly.
Yeah, I think Jungleborn Pioneer is still a replaceable card, but it's one that I think you'll play in any green deck.
I think so too. C.
It is a C.
Yeah. What about Knight of the Stampede?
This is 3 and a green for a 2/4 Human Knight at common.
Okay.
Dinosaur spells you cast cost 2 less to cast.
Wow, 2 less?
Yeah, this card looks good.
And it's a big blocker too?
You play this on turn 4, it can probably block whatever they have, and then on turn 5 you can play any dino. So, barring one of the 9 or 8 drops. Mm-hmm. But this card looks like exactly what the Red-Green Dinos deck was missing.
Yeah, it really does. This actually gives me hope that we might have a Go Big Dinos deck available to us now.
So, if that's the case, the Knight of the Stampede is going to be like a solid C to C+. If not, it's going to end up closer to the D range.
Yeah, man, it's each one too, so you could just dump your hand after casting.
So you could easily on turn 5, you can play a 3-drop dino and like a 5-drop dino, right? And just get in there.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool. Next is Naturalize. It looks like Pirate's Cutlass had a bad day. 1 and a green for an instant. At common, destroy target artifact or enchantment.
Straight up sideboard card. It's like a sideboard B.
Yeah, we've seen this card. This is probably the most printed sideboard card since we've been doing the podcast. Next is Orazka Frillback. This is 2 and a green for a dinosaur. It's common and it's a 4/2. This is the one I was referring to earlier. It's a Frenzied Raptor, but just in green.
Yeah, this card looks playable.
Looks good to me.
Looks like a C. The Dino deck will be happy to play it, and so will any aggressive green deck, which we haven't seen as much of.
No, we haven't, but still, these cards even block pretty well. So I like Orazka Frillback at C as well. This card's playable and fine, and you should probably run it. What about Overgrown Armasaur?
It's 3 green for a 4/4 Dino at common, and its enrage is make a 1/1 green Sapperling.
Make a Sapperling. Interesting.
I like this card because It's a 5-mana 4/4. You're just going to tangle with it and end up with a 1/1 a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And if you can trigger Enrage, you get little bits of value here and there too.
It's kind of a non-bow with some of the Enrage enablers that we've seen. That
Yes,
kill all
if you're
the previous
pinging
seven.
everything for 1, and then, as long as you time it right, it'll work out.
Yeah. But I like it. This card seems solid to me. Not super impressive, but solid. I would say it's also a C.
I believe that Overgrown Armasaur is a C, which is good for a 5-mana 4/4.
It actually is, yeah. Another sideboard card here, Plummet. It's 1 and a green for an instant. It's common. It says destroy target creature with flying.
Very solid sideboard card.
Yeah.
It's a sideboard B because it kills good things when you bring it in, but you can't really main deck it.
Yeah, it's your best removal spell against flyers, instant speed, 2 mana. Good sideboard card, like you said. Strength of the Pack is next. It's 4 green for a sorcery. It's uncommon, and it says put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Whew.
This is pretty substantial. If you have 3 creatures in play, this is +6/+6 all told.
And it stays.
And it stays. I think that Strength of the Pack is going to end up being a pretty good finisher for green decks. Not even like dino decks, despite all the dinosaurs in the picture. Mm-hmm. I think that if you can stall the board with Merfolk, or even just do normal Merfolk things and then just play this and give a couple creatures +2/+2, it's going to be a pretty...
You see the flavor text on this thing?
Yes.
It's pretty good.
That's the coverage motto. We at least do the third part.
The Strength of the Pack. Yeah, we do that part. Very expensive. And sorcery speed, though. You're not, you're not coming out of nowhere with this thing.
No, but this is the kind of card that will just straight up win you the game when you cast it.
You force a bunch of chumps.
And unlike Overrun, you don't actually have to attack with everything that turn in order to get the value. Mm-hmm. You can play this, attack with 2 creatures, leave 2 back because the counters are just stick around.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so how highly are we valuing the first Strength of the Pack that we can get our hands on?
Pretty high.
Because they go down after that. But.
Yeah, I think once you have 1, you don't really need another. I mean, you'll play 2, but it's not a high priority. Mm-hmm. The first one has to be a B.
Really? You're that high powerful. On it? Okay.
I think you just win the game if you cast this. Granted, this format might just be super fast. No one ever blocks.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
There's no board stalls. But if there's any semblance of mid-range in this format, this card does crush that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And green does seem to be the color that's set up for that the most from what we've seen. Okay, well, I'll go B- on Strength of the Pack then. If you think it's that good, I'm going to come up on. I was going to go a little bit lower because of the speed, but you're right. Like, this does assume that you've got some type of mid-range stuff going on. Swift Warden is next. It's 1 green for a 3/3 Merfolk Warrior with Flash. Whoa, I like my 3/3s for 3. This one has Flash. When it enters a battlefield, target Merfolk you control, it just has upside, gains hexproof until end of turn.
Yeah, this card's a beating.
What the hell? I was trying to find the drawback. I never found one.
It's either going to ambush one of their 2/2s or counter one of their removal spells, and both of those things are great.
Yeah, while adding a super 3/3 for 3. We've been talking about those all show. Also, the ones that they don't know that are coming are even better. And I don't just mean that with ambushing. I just mean end step play this, and combat math is way different.
Oh yeah,
that's like your worst case scenario.
This will mess up a lot of what your opponent's planning to
And
do.
it's a Merfolk?
It's really good if you put turn 5, you won with the wind one of your creatures and just have this in your hand.
Oh my god, that's brutal.
So
yeah.
Swift Warden looks like a B to me.
Me too.
This card looks really good.
Yeah, it looks super good. Especially if you were ever able to block in this format, it would be even better. 2 more cards in green. Thrashing Brontodon. I like the sound of that already. 1 green for a 3/4. Whoa! It's a dinosaur at uncommon. You can pay 1 mana and sacrifice Thrashing Brontodon. Wow! To destroy target artifact or enchantment. Holy crap.
I love this card.
I was looking for the drawback on this one too. This card's awesome.
It's a 3-mana 3/4, which is great. That's a great set of stats. And you can sack it to kill an artifact or enchantment in the middle of the game when they play something that's more dangerous than a 3/4.
Holy crap, that card's good.
Isn't going to happen super often, but that's a real upside. Also, like if you have this in play and they have an artifact or enchantment in play, they can no longer point removal of this when you have mana up because they'll just get 2 for 1.
Exactly. And that is very relevant when they're being beaten down by an early 3/4. I'm in love.
So I think Thrashing Brontodon might get a B+.
I do
just
too.
It's so efficient.
I do too. And we've already seen a lot of auras in the set review, and it can hit all of those, whether they're removal or just a must kill creature augmenting aura. Wow. Those last 2 cards were insane. One more. Thunderherd Migration. This is 1 and a green for a sorcery at uncommon. As an additional cost to cast it, you reveal a dinosaur card from your hand or you pay 1. So it's 3 mana, or if you reveal a dino, 2. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Wait a minute, this is just worse than Rampant Growth, isn't it?
But Rampant Growth's too good for this world.
It's too good, isn't it? Wow.
So this
is an uncommon bad Rampant Growth? Holy crap.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize Rampant Growth is that good.
So this is a good accelerant on 2 if you have dinos. And this is the kind of card that makes me think a dino deck might work out sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I'd still rather just play a 2-drop creature on turn 2 and just play a 3-drop creature on turn 3 and just play a 4-drop creature on turn 4.
Agree. Yeah.
So
because you need to be able to block, interact.
I'm not jazzed about Thunderherd Migration. I think you'll play it in your dino decks because it is a 2-drop. But outside of a dino deck, it looks pretty bad. So this looks like a C to me.
Yeah, me too. You can tell that things have changed a little bit as far as how they evaluate those. All right, a few more cards to go here. Some artifacts. First up is Gleaming Barrier. This is 2 mana, 2 generic mana for a 0/4 wall at common. It has Defender. And when it dies, you get a treasure. Well, look, I like the idea of a 2 mana blocker that gives me a little bit of upside later. The thing I don't like is that from what I've seen, this thing will not be a good blocker.
I think that because it can't block flyers or menace creatures particularly well, it's not going to end up blocking all that effectively, and then it's just not going to die all that much, and it's just not all that exciting when it does.
No, like you know, if you trade it for a combat trick, I suppose that's okay, but even then, that's, you want it to hold off a creature for a while. I would assume that Gleaming Barrier ends up being like a D+, but I will hold out hope that that is not the case and that it's like a C- or a C.
Yeah, I think that it's just going to be a D. I don't think I'm going to play this card.
All right. What about, well, that's an F, but what about Orazca Relic?
It's a 3 mana artifact at common. It has Ascend.
Okay.
You can tap it for a colorless, or you can tap, sack it, and gain 3 and draw a card, but only if you have the City's Blessing.
You gain 3 life and draw a card?
Yep.
See, this is another one that I like, that this scales with the game in a way that I want it to. It makes mana for me early, which is when I want it, and then later it gives me cards and even some life, which is what I want in the late game. Card in the late game, but I just feel pessimistic about Ascend. That's what makes me nervous. Though I guess this does work, right? You play this, it's a permanent, then it allows you to dump your hand presumably, and then you get a little bit of value at the end of the rainbow.
I'm just worried about the turns where you have 6, 7, 8, 9 permanents where you're done using this, but you still can't sack it.
And they're like take 5,
And paying 3 mana to ramp from, on turn 3 to turn 5, essentially skipping turn 4. I'd rather, again, just play a creature on that turn because I don't think you can afford to turn off. So this looks pretty bad to me. In a dedicated ramp deck, I could see it being good, but I just don't know if that's going to consistently come together.
Yeah.
Which makes me want to give Orazca Relic a D.
Yeah, me too. I like the design of it, but I feel like the format might be hostile. Strider Harness. This is a reprint as well. It's 3 mana for an equipment. The equip cost is just 1, so that is where you want to be. And it actually is really relevant that it's only 1 because the equipped creature gets +1/+1, fine, but haste as well. So the idea is you take a turn off on turn 3, you cast your Strider Harness. Then on turn 4, you play a land and a 3-drop and equip it and hit them. And then you play a 4-drop on turn 5 and equip it and hit them, etc. It sets you back a turn, but gives your creatures haste and makes them a bit bigger. Never been super impressed by Strider Harness.
Nope.
I wouldn't call it unplayable, but it's approaching that territory.
I think Strider Harness is pretty bad. Like you said, waiting an extra turn on a creature to give it haste doesn't really help all that much.
Right, it kind of goes against the idea. Now, it does give it +1/+1, but we were talking about that before. That's not an equipment we're super stoked on anyway. So I would say Strider Harness is going to end up being in the D to D- range. I think it's just not a card you're super interested in.
Yeah, I think D- on Strider Harness makes sense.
And my God, the times when you're getting beaten down and your turn 3 play is Strider Harness, you are dead. Very, very dead, because you're not going to be attacking, you want to block, and this thing doesn't do much on blocks. Next 2 cards are very similar, and how they give me just a gleam of hope. Traveler's Amulet. It's an artifact that costs 1 mana. It's common. You can pay a mana and sacrifice it to go get a basic land card out of your library and put it into your hand. So it's colorless mana fixing, and in some ways can even replace a land in your deck, especially the first one. Look, when I see a card like this, Luis, I think, well, they're letting me fix my mana, right? Therefore, I will have time to do so. And it makes me think I might be able to do that kind of nonsense stuff.
You don't really want to play this unless you're playing 3 colors, but it can replace a land pretty easily. I think this card's going to be one of the cards you happy to open in sealed, but not really play out very often in draft.
Right. And then the next card, which is similar, is Evolving Wilds. Of course, it's a land, tap it, sack it, and search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield, tap, and then shuffle. Again, mana fixing, but in aggressive formats, these type of cards tend to fade away.
Well, I like Evolving Wilds a lot more than Traveler's Amulet because if you don't have a 1-drop, then you can just play Evolving Wilds on turn 1, and it does help your mana. So if you have some double color spells, I tend to like it, but not a high priority. I mean, this card's a C, but I'm not really taking it over any cards that I really need for my deck. It's just a bonus.
The last set of cards are dual lands of the most simple variety, or maybe the second most simple. Forsaken Sanctuary, Foul Orchard, Highland Lake, Stone Quarry, and Woodland Stream. These are all just tap duals, and they're enemy colors. So there's a white-black, a green-black, a blue-red, a white-red, and a blue-green. And they are simple. They tap for either color, and they enter battlefield tapped, and they're all uncommon.
Much like Evolving Wilds, they are fine cards. If I'm playing blue-green, I'll always put Woodland Stream in my deck, but I'm not going out of my way to pick it.
But what I want to know, though, is why? Why are this is 5 uncommons. These are premium slots.
Oh,
in a set like
why
this.
are these
What
here?
are they here for? Like, just so I can cast my vampires with Forsaken Sanctuary?
I guess so.
I mean, when I see these, it makes me want to, go a little deep or try something different. And I see Traveler's Amulet, Evolving Wilds, and a cycle of duels. I think, okay. But if all I'm doing is just making sure that I cast my aggressive 3-drop on time, I'm a little less stoked on it. I assume that these are not high picks.
They're not.
Okay.
You will play them, but you'll take them over or below any card that you expect to play in your main deck, pretty much.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it. That is it for the Rivals of Ixalan Commons and Uncommon set review. Anything stand out to you? I think the biggest question mark coming in, Luis, and I think the most movement that we could have is Ascend. How often does it really happen?
I think that the biggest question for me, because I don't think Ascend is going to happen very often,
Yeah.
is whether a Dino ramp deck actually is good.
Okay.
Because that is one of the 4 tribes, and I'm really interested to see how that ends up playing out. The other tribes look like they play about the same right now.
Yeah, they do. Okay, so we're going to get a chance to find that out as the pre-release comes up this weekend. We want to wish you luck at that, and hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR, and Luis is LSV. I want to remind you about our sponsor, channelfireball.com. Of course, you can get your own your hands right now on Rivals of Ixalan. You can pre-order it right now from channelfireball.com. And while you're there, check out some of the awesome free content right on the front page, including Deck of the Day by Eric Froelich, a bunch of videos by some of the best players in the world and also me. And then a bunch of good strategy and sort of community type stuff on the written side as well. And like I said, singles or sealed product for Rivals of Ixalan are available right now on channelfireball.com. Make sure you check that out if you're interested in getting your hands on some of that. Everything related to the podcast can be found at lrcast.com, including links to my YouTube channel, Luis's stream, and everything that we do outside of LR. And then, of course, archive of every episode of Limited Resources ever is also on that website, lrcast.com. All the links are in the show notes for everything pertaining to that. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and spending some time talking about this exciting new set that's coming out, Rivals of Ixalan. Is it going to be a big game changer, or are we going to have a few more months of Ixalan-style drafting? We will be finding out soon. We'll see you next week for the Rivals of Ixalan Rare and Mythic Rare set review.
All right, Marshall, for this sign-off, I'll be short and to the point.
Okay, what do you got?
I actually have a kind of funny story about communication from game design. It's actually
that's interesting.
This is an anecdote. This happened quite some time ago, back when the So the game in question is Versus System. This is the Marvel game with, Wolverine, the X-Men, what have you. And so one of the things you do in game design is art descriptions. Yeah, the art doesn't just appear on the cards. What will happen is someone in design will write a description of what they want the art to be. And they're not the ones drawing it, but they're the ones writing that. So for Sweltering Suns, right, from Amonkhet, someone probably wrote a soldier getting beaten down by the rays of the sun or whatever.
Yeah.
For Searing Spear, it's like a spear made of flame pierces a human soldier. Whatever. It behooves you to make sure you're communicating well. And this is here's an example of it not going so well.
This sounds good.
So are you familiar with the character Galactus?
Yeah. He's got the big crown thing and all that. Yeah.
He Galactus, the planet eater. Silver Surfer's his herald. Who comes to the planets and tells them they're going to be doomed or whatever. So for the card Galactus, the art description was Galactus blocking out the sun.
Okay.
Right, because Galactus
is so
huge.
Big, right?
So the artist did not know the Marvel universe. The art they got back was Galactus kind of like leaning back with his hands up to shield his vision from the sun. Because Galactus did not want to get the sun in his eyes. He's like,
oh, that's great.
He's like leaning back with both his hands up, his like palms facing outwards, like kind of like cringing a little bit. And it's like,
oh man, Galactus needs sunglasses is what they got back. So you're saying communication is important, eh?
Well, you just don't assume the other person you're talking to has all the same context. Because when I told you Galactus blocking out the sun, you immediately went to, Galactus looming in front of the sun.
Because I know he's big. Like, that's his key feature or whatever.
And he's badass. Galactus is like, this huge villain. Someone who I assume did not know who Galactus was, besides, the references of like, oh, this is the character. Where it's like, oh, Galactus blocking out the sun. Like, all right.
You got it. You're paying my check. That's great.
So,
all right. Lesson learned, I guess.